If they engraved the array patterns onto the ordinary guns, they would undoubtedly become very popular in Dajin. Take Su Zixan's handgun as an example, it was as powerful as the Magnum even with poor quality bullets. Even more. Cold bullets, fire bullets, and exploding bullets, Su Zixan continued the list in her mind. Of course, the cost was inevitable. Fang Qi didn't care about when such weapons could be developed. After all, his job was answering questions and providing professional knowledge when they encountered difficulties. While they were talking about the details of the partnership, most of the players began playing The Legend of the Sword and Fairy in the internet cafe, and the remaining few played Resident Evil and Diablo. In fact, after Fang Qi played to the end of the game, most of the players of The Legend of the Sword and Fairy were determined to change the ending, turning the tragic story into a happy one. As to why Fang Qi had gotten such an ending, they attributed it to his unfamiliarity to the plot and his poor combat abilities. Despite Fang Qi's high-level skills in playing games, his combat abilities were way lower than his customers who had spent years on cultivation and combat. In the later stage of the game, the players could not only use Li Xiaoao's spiritual spells and sword techniques but their own techniques from the real world. Today, several players were about to pass the game. "Senior, are you battling Baiyu?" And Huey was the first who stood behind to watch the game when he saw that Nalan Hongyu was going to battle Baiyu. "Dad, you're watching it as well." And Chang showed up from somewhere. "Don't bother me." And Huey kept his eyes glued on the screen. "Watch how Senior plays the game and learn from him." And Chang was a little speechless. In fact, many people had high hopes for Nalan Hongyu, thinking that his high cultivation strength would make him play better than Fang Qi. It was why many players including Song Qingfeng came and watched Nalan Hongyu fight with Baiyu. "Humph! I knew the owner didn't play well. This senior looks powerful, and I'm sure he can save Ling." Seeing Nalan Hongyu fighting with Baiyu, Zhang Xiaoyu hurried over with a stool. On the screen, the Baiyu sect master stared at Li Xiaoao and the others coldly. "You little thieves know nothing about my grand plan which I've poured all my efforts in. Now, I only need blood from one male and one female to resurrect my beloved water demon beast. Baiyu is too ambitious." And Cheng said. "He even wants to use Xiaoao and Nu as sacrifices. He's despicable." Zhang Xiaoyu nodded her head in resentment. At this moment, Nanlan Hongyu yelled while he controlled Li Xiaoao in the screen, "Old B** starred. I, Nalan Hongyu, will kill you today." On the screen, the Baiyu sect master's expression suddenly turned dull as he looked at Li Xiaoao who shouted with flying spit. All the people watching froze. "Senior, you're confusing the roles," and Huey's face twitched as he stood behind Nalan Hongyu's seat. Zhang Xiaoyu covered her face in extreme embarrassment while she murmured to herself, "I'm here to watch Ling to be rescued." Ignore these details. On the other side, Su Tianji also battled her way to the Devil Locking Tower. As a fan of both Ling and Yuuru, she was determined to bring both Ling and Yuuru back home. In her opinion, the game ending that Fang Qi got was disgusting. Yuuru almost died, and Ling didn't return. It is a shameful ending. I'll show you how to rescue both Yuuru and Ling. Su Tianji smiled. She even pulled Fenghua and Yuexin over to watch her. Watch how your master does the rescue. Su Tianji was confident since her control of the spiritual essence and her skill level were way higher than Fang Qi. Ling. Then, they saw Li Xiaoao arriving at the bottom of the Devil Locking Tower on the screen. With tears in her eyes, Ling looked at the two people who came to rescue her. Your older sister is here to save you. Su Tianji said sincerely while she looked at Ling. Suddenly, the atmosphere on the screen turned cold. Yuuru was silent, and so was Ling. This mistake was even worse than Nalan Hongyu's. Fenghua and Yuexin's faces twitched after they saw this. Even Xiao Yulv, who had watched many people game, felt awkward and thought, am I really watching The Legend of the Sword and Fairy? I miss the owner's live stream. Fenghua and Yuexin felt awkward as well, wondering how things had turned weird suddenly. "We're here to watch the rescue of Yuuru, right?" "Ugh. Yeah," Feng Hua and Uxin whispered to each other, "we'll just watch how Yuuru will be rescued." "We'll pretend nothing happened," Xiao Yulv murmured, "I have a feeling that I shouldn't stand here and watch anymore." Naively, they continued to watch. The Wind and Moon Pavilion. Fang Qi, Nalan Mingxiu and Li Haoran had reached the end of their discussion. "Mr. Fang, so you'll do nothing, leaving all the work to us?" Nalan Mingxiu seemed displeased. Fang Qi shrugged. "Do you want me to close the internet cafe and do research with you every day?" Nalan Mingxiu's face froze. "Let's just do what we planned." Li Haoran had no objections to the plan. According to the agreement they reached in the meeting, Nalan Mingxiu would provide the money, Li Haoran's Blue Flame Pavilion would make the items, and Fang Qi was responsible for providing the knowledge. However, Li Haoran asked, "This special spiritual artifact is used only to deal with zombies in the game. Can they be used in battles between humans?" Indeed, it seemed like these kinds of weapons were more effective against humans. Fang Qi glanced at his task list and said, "A new game will come up soon, and it will answer that question. Will you try it?" "A new game?" They looked at Fang Qi in surprise. "Is it necessary to make a new game just to test this spiritual artifact?" Nalan Mingxiu asked in bafflement, "Will this game attract players? We can use the game to test the spiritual artifacts." Li Haoran looked indifferent. "Otherwise, we might hurt people by accident if we tested it in the real world." "Right. We'll have lots of testing to do in the future." Nalan Mingxiu agreed with him. Fang Qi planned to explain the new game, but he fell silent when he heard their discussion. At this moment, it seemed like these people had no idea what was waiting for them. However, since he was in a game, he wasn't a bit worried. "Senior, you play better than the shop owner." An Hui chuckled while he watched the screen. "Of course." Ouyang Zhen nodded. "The senior's realm is way higher than the owner. In a moment, Baihu will learn a hard lesson." The overwhelming sword energy seemed to spill out of the screen while the people around it watched the game in excitement. Baihu was indeed powerful, but so was Nalan Hongyu, whose great strength allowed him to use any technique he wanted. Besides, Li Xiaoao's cultivation strength had reached the ultimate realm. "Did you see that? The senior can fight Baihu without the liquor immortal spell." "Hiss, the senior is indeed powerful." As the faction master of Cloud Ocean faction, Yesong Tao rarely had time to play games here or watch others play. However, he stood among the crowd today, watching the game as well. At this moment, Baihu began to show signs of defeat on the screen. The people who were watching the game shouted out praises. "Heavenly Sword! Heavenly Sword!" Seeing Li Xiaoao gaining the upper hand without even using the liquor immortal spell, and Cheng and others got excited. "Kill him instantly with another attack. It's what he gets for killing my Ling." "Who's your Ling?" "She's mine." Buletin Che got angry instantly. "Don't fight. Ling is like my daughter." Yesong Tao glared at them. "If she must marry someone, she will choose someone like Xiaoao. You don't deserve her. I'm your daughter." Ye Xiao was displeased. "Well." Yesong Tao's face turned dark. "Can't I have two daughters?" Everyone was at a loss for words. "Don't argue. Look at the screen." Someone yelled, and the others immediately turned their eyes to the screen and saw huge waves rise from the vast green lake beneath. Then, the water in the center of the lake rose slowly as if a huge mountain was rising from the bottom of the lake. "What's happening?" Everyone was startled. "Didn't we agree that Xiaoao could catch Baihu off guard and kill him instantly to stop him from merging with the water demon beast?" The players had spent days racking their brains and came up with many plans. They had talked about this strategy beforehand and agreed that it was easier to deal with Baihu before he merged with the water demon beast. But now, on the screen, Baihu only showed half of his body above the water, but this half-body looked like a huge mountain while the surging flood looked as if it would burst out of the screen. Baihu knew that he would be defeated, so he merged with the water demon beast directly. Having witnessed that scene, An Hue explained. Instantly, the whole world was flooded. Boundless water swept out and swallowed the land and mountains. So strong. The first to experience the scene was Nalan Hung Guyu. Without the separation of the screen, he was experiencing the horrifying strength of this ancient monster firsthand. Liquor Immortal Spell. Use the Liquor Immortal Spell. Seeing their strategy proving useless, the audience felt agitated. However, when Nalan Hung Guyu condensed the heavenly sword again, this huge sword looked like a tiny toothpick in front of the huge monster that was rising high into the sky. Baihu waved his hand and sent the sword flying. Facing the giant monster which looked like a devil god, Nalan Hung Guyu thought hard but realized that neither his own techniques or Li Xiaoao's techniques could be used to fight his enemy. Nalan Hung Guyu had no choice but to use the Liquor Immortal spell. Fate was like a cage covered by thorns, people always wanted to break out from it, but they eventually got severely injured for their efforts. When they watched Fang Qi play the game, they had thought that he was too weak. Now, they suddenly realized that Ling was probably destined to die. No matter how hard they tried, they could change the development of the plot but could never change her fate. When Baihu's powerful shadow took root in people's minds, they watched the surging flood on the screen and finally understood that it was Ling's fate. With this realization, an indescribable sadness rose in everyone's heart. A dam in their hearts seemed to burst. They looked back on the beautiful moments and found that only despair was left. Maybe all is destined. Even the most unsentimental people couldn't help but shed tears. When Fang Qi returned to the internet cafe, it was quite late. He found that the atmosphere was weird when he entered the shop. Different from the usual bustling, the shop was extremely quiet today. The first person he saw was Su Tianji, who sat on a seat close to the door with her head resting on the desk. Her two disciples looked dazed while wiping their faces. "Well, you can start again. Don't be so sad," Fang Qi patted Su Tianji on the shoulder and said. Su Tianji looked up immediately, and her teary eyes were full of murderous spirit. Fang Qi glanced at the screen and saw Li Xiaoao standing before Yueru's bed. He wondered if her game ended without even saving Yueru. Besides Xiao Yulv, even Feng Hua and Yuexin were stupefied, not expecting their lofty master to cry so heartbrokenly. It turned their beliefs upside down. On the other side, a group of people sat together with the men in silence and the women in tears. With their carefully made plans and even with the knowledge of the future, they still couldn't defeat fate, which was why they were so sad. The despicable owner created this damned game. Zhang Xiaoyu stomped her foot while she cried. How come the villains are so powerful? It doesn't make sense. Right. It doesn't make sense. Hearing the shout, Su Tianji immediately supported her. She glared at Fang Qi and said, "How could a faction be so powerful? How come the devil-locking tower is guarded by a god? How can people blame the game for their own poor skills?" Fang Qi mumbled to himself. Su Tianji's pretty face turned dark immediately, and it looked like she wanted to hit him. "I don't care." Zhang Xiaoyu walked over immediately and grabbed Fang Qi clothes in a huff, saying, "Which senior made this game? Tell the senior named Yu to change the story. Ling's fate is too pitiable. TL note, Yu is the developer of the original game. I also want Yu to change the story." Fang Qi rubbed his nose while he looked at the angry crowd. They all wanted to hit someone to vent their anger. They hated the story and wanted to kill the story writer. "Oh, we have a new game today." After looking at the sulky people around him, Fang Qi said, "If you attack me, the shop owner, you can never return to the shop. However, you can beat me in this game. If you want to play it, you can register for it later. We can beat the shop owner." They looked at each other in surprise. "Ugh! It looks quite..." Li Haoran murmured. "He's tricking us into buying the new game." While walking with others into the shop after Fang Qi, Nalan Mingxia whispered to herself. It seemed like she had seen through Fang Qi trick. We can beat the shop owner soon. People like An Hui looked at each other, thinking that if they joined hands, they could beat the owner senseless. We can do that. Xiao Yul stroked his chin while he imagined the scene in which the crowd beat the shop owner. He yelled immediately, all members of our group will join the game. We don't need you to speak for us. Su Tianji gave him a dirty look. However, with Yoru's death in her game, Su Tianji needed to vent her anger on someone. This damned shop is to blame for the tragic ending of my Ling and Yoru. It sounds good to give the shop owner a good beating. It only costs 6 crystals, right? Su Tianji glanced at the price and realized that it wasn't expensive. She immediately took out the crystals, saying, I'll have a try. Beat him. Beat the despicable owner. Zhang Xiaoyu wiped her tears and said with a pout, if not for the despicable owner, Sister Ling wouldn't have died. While handing her a tissue, Fang Qi pinched her small cheek and asked, Hey, which side are you on? I'm on the side of Sister Ling. Zhang Xiaoyu glared at Fang Qi and said angrily. Fang Qi's face turned dark when he heard that his employee betrayed him for a character in the game. I should deduct her pay for this. At this moment, the people were all in a bad mood. Nalan Hongui rolled up his sleeves, saying, Come on. Let me see what this new game is about. Since they still had some time left, they decided to use it to distract themselves from their sulky thoughts. Otherwise, they would sink deeper into their melancholy. Me. Ye Xiao loved anything that was fun. After seeing a new game, she also wanted to try it. I'll play it too. The last few who joined the game were An Hui and Su Zixin, while the others decided to watch it first. Including people like Nalan Mingxia who wanted to test guns in the game, there were altogether 9 players. Fang Qi entered the game and opened the warehouse map before turning on the live stream. Fang Qi remembered that before he traveled through dimensions, this map was the first map that he had played. In the small internet cafe with about 20 computers and about 10 players, this map was the perfect map to play. Well, the shop owner turned on the live stream. When the big screens for the live stream were turned on, they attracted many people's attention, especially those in the other shop. Not knowing the situation in this new shop, they had been quiet. However, when the live stream was turned on, they turned their attention to it. Comparatively, the old shop was noisier since the customers here played the most popular games. After all, the customers in the old shop could watch Fang Qi play games anytime and thus were influenced by him. On the other hand, the customers in the new shop played whatever games they liked, including Resident Evil. Also, about 10 players had begun Diablo. Counter-Strike had some introductions at the loading page. The introduction included the teams of terrorists and counter-terrorists, statistics and how to play, etc. The moment that the live stream was turned on, the players in the old shop were surprised. The shop owner started the live stream. It's late today. What's this game? Is it Resident Evil 2? The old shop had many Resident Evil players. After all, this game had had the most number of players before The Legend of the Sword and Fairy came out. Even now, Resident Evil had many players, and some of the new fans of The Legend of the Sword and Fairy had been playing Resident Evil before. Therefore, they got excited after seeing the guns on the screen. No. It says Counter-Strike. Guo Xiong didn't play Resident Evil until Song Qingfeng and the others had cleared all stages, but he had grown into an experienced player of Resident Evil after playing it for a long time. However, he had never seen the game, Counter-Strike, before. Therefore, he shouted at the other Resident Evil players, "Come and have a look. The shop owner has started a new game. It looks like Resident Evil. Looks like Resident Evil." Hearing his words, quite a few players backed out from their games and turned to the live stream. Shortly after Fang Qi entered the game, Nalan Hongyu and Hui and Ye Xiao also entered it. Besides Ye Xiao, Su Zixin and Fang Qi, the others all chose to be counter-terrorists. Obviously, they had purposely chosen to be on the other side of Fang Qi after seeing him choosing to be a terrorist. Due to her slow reaction, Ye Xiao had no choice but to join Team Terrorists. Looking at her role on the screen, she felt helpless. 3 on 6, this starting lineup. He. Xiao Yul's eyes lit up while he looked at the screen. Kid, you'll get a good beating. Su Tianji smiled as well. Although she didn't have a good understanding of the game yet, she liked the numbers advantage on her side. Different from Resident Evil, the players who entered the game got the basic knowledge about guns as a counter-terrorist or a terrorist, which meant that even a beginner could aim and fire a gun in the game. He. Kid, you said yourself that we can beat you. Smirking, Nalan Hongyu was the first to walk out of the building. Nalan Mingxiu remained in the building. In this map, the counter-terrorists had to buy guns in a vehicle in the building. After looking at all kinds of guns with price tags, Nalan Mingxiu nodded. It's indeed a good place to test the new spiritual artifact. As she had just spawned, she didn't have a lot of money. Therefore, she bought a grenade and some bullets. On the other side, Nalan Hongyu stretched and found that he had less warrior qi in his body. He was at the realm of an ordinary warrior. While looking down at the pistol in his hand, he wondered, so, I'll have to use this new spiritual artifact to fight enemies. He had watched many people playing Resident Evil and thus wasn't a stranger to guns. He looked back and saw Nalan Mingxiu and the others following him out of the building. Let's go and find the shop owner. After getting familiar with the gun in her hand, Su Tianji urged the others. Not caring what weapon she was using, she just wanted to beat the shop owner. The moment that they entered the warehouse, a small head stuck out. Pop! 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 Ye Xiao fell under the gunfire of the 6 counter-terrorists. My aim is excellent. Nalan Hongyu seemed to be interested in the gun in his hand. This spiritual artifact is quite good. Ye Xiao was speechless while she lay on the ground. Do you think that you can escape from us by restraining the use of our cultivation strength? Don't underestimate my marksmanship just because it's my first time to use a gun. In the uniform of a counter-terrorist, Su Tianji held her gun and thought to herself. Despite her unfamiliarity with the weapon, she wanted to vent her anger on Fang Qi since his shop had created the game in which Ling and Yuru died. When she thought that she could catch Fang Qi and give him a good beating, she felt very pleased. Let's go and find the shop owner. Just watch when I explode him with my gun. And Hui laughed. Beating the shop owner was indeed enjoyable entertainment. Now that only 2 enemies were left, they felt like they would have an easy win. They felt less scared now. I want to be a counter-terrorist. At this moment, Ye Xiao looked at the screen morosely. A moment ago, she just stuck out her head when she heard people coming, and 6 guns shot at her and killed her instantly. Comments: 12. Guess we gotta do it like we do in North Korea then, but instead of 3 generations of punishment we are gonna make it 14 raise their clan to the ground, steal their techniques, impregnate their women, steal the souls of their soldiers and clansmen and pour salt on their fields. The birth of esports. Thanks, good aim. The people watching the game felt startled when they saw the shots from Nalan Hongyu and others. Some of them had seen guns before while others didn't. Ye Songtao belonged to the second group. He felt amazed, wondering, this spiritual artifact seems easier to use than crossbows, and it can shoot continuously. For Nalan Hongyu, the pistol was just like a crossbow. After all, the Nalan family was famous for their immortal slaying crossbows, which explained why he got used to his weapon so quickly. Using it as an immortal distinguishing crossbow, Nalan Hongyu had quickly gotten the hang of it. Nalan Mingxiu and Lan Yan could use guns with proficiency since they played Resident Evil. On the other hand, Li Haoran and Hui and Su Tianji were cultivators with basic knowledge of guns and great combat experience. Their aims wouldn't go off target greatly. However, their cultivation strengths were restrained in this game, and so were their senses and speed. That was why they didn't find Su Zixin and Fang Qi hiding spots. This map favored the terrorists if they didn't run out of the warehouse. For example, they could hide on the sides and on the top of the gates of the warehouse. For the players who watched the live stream, they didn't know Fang Qi's exact hiding spot even though they saw him. When Nalan Hongguo and the others appeared within Fang Qi's sight, a black can-like object was tossed out. Before Nalan Hongguo could see anyone, he heard whistling sounds above his head. A hidden weapon. Seeing the fist-sized object being tossed from above, Nalan Hongguo looked contemptuous since this kind of hidden weapon could never hit him despite the restraint on his cultivation strength. Nalan Hongguo shot it casually. Hiss! A blinding white light exploded before them. Flash grenade! Take cover! Nalan Mingxiu had more knowledge about these weapons than the others. Although she hadn't encountered flash grenades in Resident Evil, she knew how to react to them with the knowledge that she learned from Resident Evil. Cover. Explosions are arts. Meanwhile, Fang Qi stood in the corridor of the second floor and bit off the pin of a hand grenade before throwing it down. At the same time, another hand grenade was thrown out from behind the red box on the right side of the gate. Boom! Boom! Two lights lit up the live stream screen. Seeing that she got blown into the sky and wasn't falling after a while, Su Tianji exited from the virtual headset furiously. She glared at Fang Qi beside her and wondered if they could fight in the real world. She got more furious when she saw bullet comments flooding the screen. Explosions is art. I thought you were going to beat the shop owner. It was infuriating. At this moment, An Hue also exited from the game and said in embarrassment, I was careless. I didn't expect that kid to play these tricks on us. Some of them who had survived the flash grenade got shot later. I was tricked. Nalan Hongguo didn't expect Fang Qi to be so cunning. Suddenly, a message appeared on the screen. The owner is cunning. He ambushed people from the back. It obviously came from Zhang Xiaoyu. Fang Qi was exasperated with this lowly who kept standing on the other's side. Then, more messages flooded the screen. We want to see the shop owner getting beat. It's not right to launch sneak attacks. Shop owner must come out to fight one-to-one. To play Counter-Strike, external communication must be turned off. Otherwise, the noisy messages would disturb the player's judgment. However, as a streamer, Fang Qi must check the bullet comments. The moment he checked them, he saw the ones calling him to a one-on-one fight. At last, he exited from the game with 20 HP and said, Is there anyone who wants to fight me? I'll do it. Nalan Hongguo yelled. Count me in. Su Tianji was also combative. However, in the second round, an MP5 submachine gun sprayed bullets from above before they could enter the gate. Nalan Hongguo died. Coming after him, Su Tianji died as well. Round after round, the people watched on the big screen as Fang Qi came and went from all kinds of positions including the stairs and roof with a submachine gun. They were all speechless. The shop owner is like a monkey. Bullet comments started to appear. His calculations are so good that he can always catch others off guard. Who can beat the shop owner to death? He's like a demon. Compared with other games, this game highlighted the battle of wits and courage between players. Obviously, the people who watched the live stream were attracted by this game. Compared with the dumb and stupid monsters in Resident Evil, players fought with each other, which added a sense of unpredictability and fun to the game. Steady! Steady! An Hue glanced around at the people who all wanted to fight Fang Qi in the real world and said in embarrassment, Now that we're familiar with the terrain and the weapons, we won't be tricked by this kid anymore. Damn this kid! Su Tianji stomped her feet with resentment. After all, they had claimed that they could beat the shop owner, but they ended up being beat by him. Nalan Mingxiu played and practiced with the guns on one side. Nalan Hongwu hid a hand grenade in his pocket and bought the M249 machine gun, which was the most expensive weapon in the game. On the magazine of the gun hung a string of golden bullets. The moment that Nalan Hongwu rushed into the warehouse, he saw Ye Xiao skipping up the stairs. Hee hee. Little girl, you're still skipping at this moment. Da 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 da. While laughing, Nalan Hongwu strafed with the M249 like crazy. Och! Where am I? Who shot me? Ye Xiao, who was trying to run to another shelter, was killed instantly. Soon after, the counter-terrorists found Su Zixin hiding in a corner and threw a hand grenade toward her. Where can you hide? An Huey laughed. Firing around with machine guns, they enjoyed themselves very much. This time, the shop owner is in danger. They have experience now. 6-on-1. The minions are gone. They are going to kill the boss. Kill Boss Fang. Instantly, rows after rows of bullet comments appeared on the screen. What items will Boss Fang drop? A computer. Whoever kills him can take it home. The rocket launcher. It belongs to whoever kills him. The lowly, who said lowly? Show yourself. Zhang Xiaoyu shouted after seeing that comment. After playing in the internet cafe for so long, they had learned some modern slang. All of them had been waiting for the moment that the shop owner would be beat. They had waited for a long time. Finally, the despicable owner will be killed. Zhang Xiaoyu watched in excitement. Meanwhile, An Huey was also holding a B51 in his hand, and he had 32 HP left. But since he got one kill, he earned $300. He was extremely smug. With machine guns in hand, we'll just rush in, and each of us can fire at one direction. We'll nail him. An Huey wiped his hand across his face and laughed. Su Tianji, who had been killed countless times, gritted her teeth, thinking, today, I must beat this kid once. Meanwhile, Nalan Mingxiu, who had gotten familiar with the terrain, crawled out from the ventilation duct stealthily and saw Fang Qi hiding in his base with a pistol. In contrast, she was holding an automatic rifle. Pistol? Nalan Mingxiu was pleased. Even if Fang Qi had bought a better gun by this time, she would have time to shoot him before he could change guns. However, she then saw Fang Qi dig out a dark green weapon. Then, he grinned at her. Without a word, Nalan Mingxiu fired. The shop owner is dead. What a fortune! He just changed guns. She's lucky. The players watching whispered to each other. Before Nalan Mingxiu could fire all the bullets in the cartridge, a huge booming noise came. All the players in the game heard the huge booming noise. Immediately, Nalan Hongwu received the message showing that one of his teammates had died. Nalan Mingxiu was at a loss for words. Using it as an immortal distinguishing crossbow, Nalan Hongwu had quickly gotten the hang of it. Nalan Mingxiu and Lan Yan could use guns with proficiency since they played Resident Evil. On the other hand, Li Haoran, An Huey, and Su Tianji were cultivators with basic knowledge of guns and great combat experience. Their aims wouldn't go off target greatly. However, their cultivation strengths were restrained in this game, and so were their senses and speed. That was why they didn't find Su Zixin and Fang Qi hiding spots. This map favored the terrorists if they didn't run out of the warehouse. For example, they could hide on the sides and on the top of the gates of the warehouse. For the players who watched the live stream, they didn't know Fang Qi exact hiding spot even though they saw him. When Nalan Hongwu and the others appeared within Fang Qi's sight, a black can-like object was tossed out. Before Nalan Hongwu could see anyone, he heard whistling sounds above his head. A hidden weapon. Seeing the fist-sized object being tossed from above, Nalan Hongwu looked contemptuous since this kind of hidden weapon could never hit him despite the restraint on his cultivation strength. Nalan Hongwu shot it casually. Hiss! A blinding white light exploded before them. Flash grenade! Take cover! Nalan Mingxiu had more knowledge about these weapons than the others. Although she hadn't encountered flash grenades in Resident Evil, she knew how to react to them with the knowledge that she learned from Resident Evil. Cover. Explosions are arts. Meanwhile, Fang Qi stood in the corridor of the second floor and bit off the pin of a hand grenade before throwing it down. At the same time, another hand grenade was thrown out from behind the red box on the right side of the gate. Boom! Boom! Two lights lit up the live stream screen. Seeing that she got blown into the sky and wasn't falling after a while, Su Tianji exited from the virtual headset furiously. She glared at Fang Qi beside her and wondered if they could fight in the real world. She got more furious when she saw bullet comments flooding the screen. Explosions is art. I thought you were going to beat the shop owner. It was infuriating. At this moment, An Hui also exited from the game and said in embarrassment, I was careless. I didn't expect that kid to play these tricks on us. Some of them who had survived the flash grenade got shot later. I was tricked. Nalan Hongyu didn't expect Fang Qi to be so cunning. Suddenly, a message appeared on the screen. The owner is cunning. He ambushed people from the back. It obviously came from Zhang Xiaoyu. Fang Qi was exasperated with this lowly who kept standing on the other's side. Then, more messages flooded the screen. We want to see the shop owner getting beat. It's not right to launch sneak attacks. Shop owner must come out to fight one-to-one. To play Counter-Strike, external communication must be turned off. Otherwise, the noisy messages would disturb the player's judgment. However, as a streamer, Fang Qi must check the bullet comments. The moment he checked them, he saw the ones calling him to a one-on-one fight. At last, he exited from the game with 20 HP and said, Is there anyone who wants to fight me? I'll do it. Nalan Hongyu yelled. Count me in. Su Tianji was also combative. However, in the second round, an MP5 submachine gun sprayed bullets from above before they could enter the gate. Nalan Hongyu died. Coming after him, Su Tianji died as well. Round after round, the people watched on the big screen as Fang Qi came and went from all kinds of positions including the stairs and roof with a submachine gun. They were all speechless. The shop owner is like a monkey. Bullet comments started to appear. His calculations are so good that he can always catch others off guard. Who can beat the shop owner to death? He's like a demon. Compared with other games, this game highlighted the battle of wits and courage between players. Obviously, the people who watched the live stream were attracted by this game. Compared with the dumb and stupid monsters in Resident Evil, players fought with each other, which added a sense of unpredictability and fun to the game. Steady. Steady. An Hui glanced around at the people who all wanted to fight Fang Qi in the real world and said in embarrassment, Now that we're familiar with the terrain and the weapons, we won't be tricked by this kid anymore. Damn this kid! Su Tianji stomped her feet with resentment. After all, they had claimed that they could beat the shop owner, but they ended up being beat by him. Nalan Mingxiu played and practiced with the guns on one side. Nalan Hongyu hid a hand grenade in his pocket and bought the M249 machine gun, which was the most expensive weapon in the game. On the magazine of the gun hung a string of golden bullets. The moment that Nalan Hongyu rushed into the warehouse, he saw Ye Xiao skipping up the stairs. Hee hee. Little girl, you're still skipping at this moment. Da 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 da. While laughing, Nalan Hongyu strafed with the M249 like crazy. Och! Where am I? Who shot me? Ye Xiao, who was trying to run to another shelter, was killed instantly. Soon after, the counter-terrorists found Su Zixin hiding in a corner and threw a hand grenade toward her. Where can you hide? An Hui laughed. Firing around with machine guns, they enjoyed themselves very much. This time, the shop owner is in danger. They have experience now. 6-on-1. The minions are gone. They are going to kill the boss. Kill Boss Fang. Instantly, rows after rows of bullet comments appeared on the screen. What items will Boss Fang drop? A computer. Whoever kills him can take it home. The rocket launcher. It belongs to whoever kills him. The lowly, who said lowly? Show yourself. Zhang Xiaoyu shouted after seeing that comment. After playing in the internet cafe for so long, they had learned some modern slang. All of them had been waiting for the moment that the shop owner would be beat, they had waited for a long time. Finally, the despicable owner will be killed. Zhang Xiaoyu watched in excitement. Meanwhile, An Hui was also holding a B51 in his hand, and he had 32 HP left. But since he got one kill, he earned $300. He was extremely smug. With machine guns in hand, we'll just rush in, and each of us can fire at one direction. We'll nail him. An Hui wiped his hand across his face and laughed. Su Tianji, who had been killed countless times, gritted her teeth, thinking, today, I must beat this kid once. Meanwhile, Nalan Mingxiu, who had gotten familiar with the terrain, crawled out from the ventilation duct stealthily and saw Fang Qi hiding in his base with a pistol. In contrast, she was holding an automatic rifle. Pistol? Nalan Mingxiu was pleased. Even if Fang Qi had bought a better gun by this time, she would have time to shoot him before he could change guns. However, she then saw Fang Qi dig out a dark green weapon. Then, he grinned at her. Without a word, Nalan Mingxiu fired. The shop owner is dead. What a fortune! He just changed guns. She's lucky. The players watching whispered to each other. Before Nalan Mingxiu could fire all the bullets in the cartridge, a huge booming noise came. All the players in the game heard the huge booming noise. Immediately, Nalan Hongyu received the message showing that one of his teammates had died. Nalan Mingxiu was at a loss for words. They had seen that Fang Qi didn't shoot at Nalan Mingxiu's vital locations. However, he still killed her with one shot. Since there were spatial spiritual artifacts in this world, Counter-Strike also created spatial backpacks for each player so that they didn't have to hang weapons on themselves. When the players got proficient with the act of taking weapons out of their spatial backpacks, it looked similar to switching items in other games. That was why every player still had some cultivation strength inside them. Therefore, the audience just saw the dark green big gun flash in Fang Qi hands before he switched it to a dagger. The gun disappeared, and so was the recoil. Fang Qi returned to his hiding spot behind a box with smooth movements. What was that? You can play like this. At this moment, all the players who were watching the live stream looked dazed. Where are you? How did you die? Nalan Hongyu and others were still on the first floor, wondering how Nalan Mingxiu had died. The gunshot resonated in the warehouse, and no one could tell where it came from. Nalan Hongyu immediately asked in the team channel. Nalan Mingxiu, who got killed, didn't know what to say. Oh, I forgot that dead people can't talk in the game. Nalan Hongyu slapped his forehead. As a result, everyone's face twitched. A moment ago, Ms. Nalan went to the duct. Lan Yan was the only one who replied. She was probably on the second floor. Let's go to the second floor. Nalan Hongyu yelled and led the team to the second floor. However, they searched everywhere on the second floor but couldn't see a glimpse of Fang Qi. Where is he? Maybe he knew that he is no match for us and fled. Nalan Hongyu stroked his beard. He is lucky that he escaped in time, otherwise. Su Tianji sneered with a machine gun in her hand. I would turn him into a sieve. She smiled and thought smugly, we finally struck some fear into him. After battling for so long, I finally got my revenge. Keep distance. Nalan Hongyu warned in his deep voice, this kid is very crafty. He felt as if he had returned to a battlefield and must calculate and figure out his opponent's position and thoughts with each step he took. After looking at the ventilation duct, he said, he must have run away using the duct. Judging by the time, I think he is now on the roof. Shall we go up to the roof and search for him? Lan Yan asked. No. Nalan Hongyu shook his head. He likes to catch us off guard. When we get up to the roof, he will be gone. There are only two good spots that this roof connects to. One is the bridge outside the gate, and the other is the building where we came from. Nalan Hongyu analyzed. On the bridge, he can catch us off guard, but it's not an easy place to hide. If we swarm up, he will have no place to go. We only heard one gunshot, which meant that Shui was killed by one shot. His weapon must be very powerful. His only and best choice is the roof of our base. He can guard himself well with a powerful weapon. Nalan Hongyu dropped his machine gun and picked up Nalan Mingxiu's automatic rifle, which had a scope. Now that he knew the great power of his opponent's weapon, he wouldn't seek his death by climbing up to the roof. They would have to shoot from the distance. Meanwhile, the players watching the livestream saw Fang Qi on the roof of the building where the counter-terrorists spawned. With a huge dark green gun in his hands, the black scope appeared on the center of the screen occasionally, and the distance between where he was and the gate of the warehouse looked very close in the scope. Having died in-game, Nalan Mingxiu put down her virtual headset and stared at Fang Qi's screen, which was next to hers. She had been very proficient with guns while she played Resident Evil, but her skills were obviously much inferior to Fang Qi. Since the game restrained players' cultivation strengths, dumbed their senses, and slowed their speeds, the players had to calculate where the enemies would appear in the next moment using only their brain. Now that Nalan Hongyu was quite familiar with the terrain, Nalan Mingxiu guessed that he could use the limited information he had to determine Fang Qi hiding spot and weapon before organizing their next move accordingly. Splitting up and zeroing in their fire on their enemy was the best way to deal with Fang Qi, who was scanning the area with the scope. If Fang Qi stuck out his head, he might kill one person, but he would also attract bullets from other people. He would be quickly killed under the concentrated fire from all directions. The players who were watching the big screen were also scanning the area with Fang Qi. Although they didn't see any enemies on the screen yet, they felt great suspense and pressure. After all, his enemies included several masters. These masters could get used to these simple weapons within seconds. If they got familiar with the map and strategies, Fang Qi would have no advantage over them. In fact, Fang Qi had only won narrowly in the last few rounds. It was very possible that Fang Qi would lose this round. At this moment, the audience including Nalan Mingxiu saw Fang Qi suddenly stop the scoping of the gate of the warehouse. Why did he pull back? Nalan Mingxiu was baffled. The others were also puzzled by Fang Qi's unusual move. In the next moment, everyone heard a string of gunshots. A string of shell craters appeared on the edge of the roof. Fang Qi's 72 HP dropped to 62 HP instantly. It was clear that he had been scratched by a bullet which pierced the wall. Meanwhile, Fang Qi turned his gun to the roof of the warehouse, which was out of their sight. Almost simultaneously, a figure suddenly jumped out from the ventilation duct. Boom! The loud gunshot of the sniper rifle sounded again. An Huey who had just jumped out from the ventilation duct fell to the ground before he could see the situation outside. This move baffled not only the players watching the live stream but also Nalan Mingxiu, who had been watching Fang Qi closely. Through the miraculous pullback, Fang Qi dodged his enemy's bullets just in time. Meanwhile, an Huey who had been outside of Fang Qi vision was shot dead by Fang Qi. After the shot, he withdrew the sniper rifle. He did it in one breath. If Nalan Mingxiu hadn't been watching Fang Qi play, she probably would have thought that Fang Qi used something she didn't know to cheat. They didn't know that when senses and intuitions which were crucial to powerful cultivators and warriors were gone, something called awareness helped Fang Qi make the miraculous move under the siege of many powerful masters. The two shops were dead silent. The audience held their breath with their mouths open. Then, they looked at each other, not able to understand what they had witnessed. What was that? Zhang Xiaoyu stared at the screen in a daze and felt like crying. Hey! How come the despicable owner is so strong? How can anyone beat him at all? They were tricked by the cunning owner again. In the real world, snipers usually sniped their enemies from hundreds or even thousands of meters away, and they only had one chance to kill their enemies in a crowd. Therefore, they had to plan every detail meticulously, such as the wind speed and the humidity in the air. Any tiny changes would cause them to miss their targets that were far away. However, since players battled in a small area in the game, the players couldn't only sit still and wait for their opponents with the sniper rifles, they had to handle all kinds of situations at close range as well. However, the good thing was that even if the players failed to snipe their targets and exposed their locations, they wouldn't be surrounded by soldiers like the real world. At this moment, when his enemies stopped firing, the audience saw Fang Qi screen zoomed up to a black cross. Vaguely, they saw the red dot in the center of the scope lining up with a black box. Bam! Fang Qi took back his sniper rifle. Another enemy died. Now, only Nalan Hongyu, Su Tianji, Lan Yan, and Fang Qi were left on the battlefield. Sir, how did you do it? I didn't even see that enemy. It was 1-6 at the beginning, and now half of the enemies are gone. The shop owner is awesome. Both the bullet comments and the players watching the game in the internet cafe started to chatter among themselves. There were about 200 meters between the gate of the warehouse and the roof of the building that Fang Qi was on, but the latter had killed one of his enemies easily. It was outrageous. Lan Yan's mind turned blank. Whenever the gunshot sounded, someone died. She wished that she could quit from this battle. Only Nalan Mingxiu saw Fang Qi movements. He raised the gun, took aim, and fired at the same time. It was a special rhythm instead of controlling the timing consciously. Yes, rhythm. This rhythm controlled his movements to perfection. Under this rhythm, even when he missed his target, he could move back without being targeted. If he relied purely on his senses and made those conscious decisions, his movement would never be as smooth as flowing water, even if his reactions were fast. Then, she remembered that Fang Qi had been continuously changing guns and aiming even when he was walking or taking a break. It seemed like he was trying to get back this rhythm. Now, she knew that Fang Qi was getting more proficient at using this dark green sniper rifle as if it were a part of his body. What on earth is this BS? When this round was over, Nalan Hongyu almost jumped out of his seat when he saw Fang Qi standing on the top of the building with only 10 HP left. Su Tianji felt the same way, feeling that Fang Qi never missed his shots. When she tried to distract Fang Qi by moving swiftly to another cover so that Nalan Hongyu could shoot at him, Fang Qi rifle followed her like a shadow and killed her instantly. Looking at Fang Qi on the screen, Zhang Xiaoyu was in a daze, and so was Song Qingfeng, who played Resident Evil and was proficient with guns. Everyone was stupefied. All the viewers who were watching the live stream in both shops were stupefied. Guns can be used this way. He had defeated 6 opponents including Nalan Hongyu. Each of these 6 people had gotten used to guns and this map. Among these weapons, there is another powerful killing weapon that could kill from such a long distance besides the rocket launcher. More importantly, everyone had seen from the Fang Qi encounter with Nalan Mingxiu that this gun was also powerful at close range. Also, the power of each weapon depended on the users. You used an advanced technique, right? Nalan Mingxiu had been watching Fang Qi play the game from the beginning to the end. Technique. Hearing Nalan Mingxiu's words, everyone snapped out of their daze and looked toward Fang Qi. This weird spiritual artifact that seemed to be designed for ordinary people looked simple, but it could unleash extraordinary power when it was used with some techniques. This weapon is called a sniper rifle. The techniques that the shop owner just used are called quickscope and flick shot. When one gets to the advanced level, there is a high-level technique called gun combat technique. These weapons look simple but are very powerful. Hearing Fang Qi words, all the people had lights in their eyes, imagining their bright future with these wondrous weapons. These weapons could be used just like sabers and swords. They could be used in battles instead of being novelties. They look awesome. They look magical in the shop owner's hands. Seeing Fang Qi marksmanship, people exclaimed. Despite his excellent performance in the game, Fang Qi was surrounded by Nalan Hongyu and Huawei and Su Tianji, whom he had defeated in the game. Kid! Do you dare to fight me in the real world? Su Tianji was the most furious one among them. She had been depressed by her time playing The Legend of the Sword and Fairy, and then she was tricked into counter-strike by Fang Qi and got beaten senseless by him in the game. She had a horrible gaming experience. She wanted to fight Fang Qi in the real world. However, she was just saying it to vent her anger, since a Divine Ocean Realm cultivator wouldn't bully Fang Qi, who wasn't even an ancestral warrior yet. She wouldn't do it just for a game, she wasn't so immature. Kid! Couldn't you go easy on us? Nalan Hongyu and Huawei and the others also looked angry, but they felt a bit better since they had gotten several kills on Ye Xiao and Su Zixin. Is there no one who can give the despicable owner a lesson? Zhang Xiaoyu, who had been hoping for Fang Qi to get beat, felt like crying. She sent a bullet comment, "Someone give Mr. Fang a lesson. Look how smug he is." Quickly, the viewers who had waited a whole day to see the defeat of the shop owner seconded her proposal. Give him a hard lesson. Mr. Fang is awesome. One more round. We want to see the shop owner beat. Fang Qi became the public enemy while the bullet comments flooded the screen. Let's play another round. Nalan Mingxiu finished eating her Häagen-Dazs and said casually. Another round. Fang Qi shrugged. Even if I goof around, the result will be the same. Nalan Hongyu and others' face fell. How arrogant was he? At this moment, even Nalan Hongyu and An Huawei wanted to fight Fang Qi in the real world as well. One more round. They said with dark expressions, "We're not afraid of you." 10 minutes later a gunshot sounded, and Nalan Hongyu was again the last person on his team. Although he wasn't shot in his head, he had lost most of his HP hiding behind a police car. Fang Qi broadcasted the game leisurely while he looked at his remaining half of HP. Did you see how I did it? I know you didn't, which is what I expected. You see that I never show myself, but there were 5 rounds of psychological battles during the process. Whatever strategy he uses, he will die first. He must shoot several times before he can kill me, but I can kill him by one touch. It means that I will win as long as I don't get reckless. Fang Qi explained as Nalan Hongyu crept up toward him with only a few HP left. Meanwhile, Nalan Mingxiu, who sat next to Fang Qi, made a move expressionlessly to everyone's surprise. This move wouldn't pose any threats to Fang Qi and couldn't be regarded as a provocation. Creak! Creak! Ha 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 ha! The system, I saw nothing. On the screen, Nalan Hongyu lifted the machine gun and da 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 da. GG. Fang Qi skills were basically textbook examples. Of course, the last scene was excluded. From the perspective of weapon performance, the pistols are light while the submachine guns have great damage, Nalan Mingxiu concluded expressionlessly. The sniper rifles are perfect weapons for fighting from the distance. If they can be made into spiritual artifacts and be used by people who are skilled, they can be used in higher level battles. So. She looked toward Fang Qi in satisfaction but saw his dark face. So, as an advisor, I can only provide answers to you in terms of making pistols right now, Fang Qi said with a polite smile. Please choose 3 pistols, Ms. Nalan. Nalan Mingxiu was at a loss for words. Anyway, the activity of beating the shop owner was over. In the internet cafe, all the players were talking about what they had seen on the big screens. Even most cultivators couldn't quickly kill their enemies from a long distance, let alone warriors. However, Fang Qi had calmly targeted his enemies in this map and killed them one by one. The shop owner looks quite young. How come he is so good? Feng Hua whispered. He's very cunning. He seemed to know our master's thoughts and intentions. Yuexin whispered back, Master was killed whenever she stuck out her head, it was so sad, Feng Hua. Yuexin. What are you talking about? Su Tianji's veins bulged on her forehead. They were saying that you were killed whenever you stuck out your head, Auntie! Xiao Yulv told on them. His voice was loud, and a group of people immediately turned their heads toward them. Su Tianji froze. I heard them. I don't need you to repeat what they said, she spat out the words from clenched teeth. Shall I kick you out, or do you want to get out of here yourself? Ugh, Xiao Yulv's face froze. I'm out of here, he fled. Nalan Hongyu was interested in the weapons but more interested in Fang Qi skills. In his hands, the weapons were accurate and powerful like great tools, but it felt like they were alive in Fang Qi hands. Kid. Nalan Hongyu felt embarrassed for being defeated by Fang Qi repeatedly, but anyway he got one back at last, although with some tricks. He patted Fang Qi on the shoulder and said feelingly, "It's a pity that you were not born in the right era, senior, you mean," and Huey felt embarrassed but knew when to exit graciously. After all, they had at least won one round. If they continued, they would probably get worse results. With your craftiness and the new spiritual artifacts, you can even defeat a small troop. Nalan Hongyu stroked his beard and said with a chuckle, "If you lived in my era, you would probably be famous for your achievements in the army already. What do you think, kid? Do you want to join the army?" Nalan Hongyu asked. Not interested. Nalan Hongyu, and Huey. Before Nalan Hongyu could explain to Fang Qi the benefits of joining the army, such as promotions in the official system and entering the aristocratic class, the latter simply refused him. Leaning against the computer desk, Fang Qi scooped up a spoonful of Häagen-Dazs into his mouth and said in earnest, "My dream is to be the owner of an internet cafe." That was all. While staring at the big screen, Song Qingfeng snapped back to reality and asked, "Do we have class this afternoon?" Lin Xiao scratched his head in embarrassment. "Yet. I guess." Su Luo swallowed his saliva with difficulty and asked, "What time is it now?" Nalan Mingxiu took out the communication jade which had a clock on it and glanced at it, saying mildly, "It's 2:10 p.m. Song Qingfeng and his buddies got nervous. They looked at each other and said, "The afternoon's class starts at 1:30 p.m., right?" It was now 2:10 p.m., and it will take them at least 20 minutes to ride the carriages to Lingyun Academy. At this thought, cold sweat appeared on their foreheads. "I got to go. See you later." Song Qingfeng hurried out, followed by Su Luo and the others. Nalan Mingxiu froze for a second and then said, "I should go to class too." "Go to class?" At this moment, someone sent a bullet comment to the big screen, "Who else has class this afternoon?" "FK. It's past 2. My teacher will kill me." About 10 players instantly left the internet cafe. Su Zixin said, "Condolences to you." Meanwhile, Huo Chang was facing the sea. "Father." Behind him, a young man bowed to him slightly. Huo Chang nodded slightly. "How are the preparations?" "They are done." The young man frowned and said, "However, according to the information we received in the last couple of days, I'm afraid that the situation is worse than we imagined. Do we really need to join them?" "Don't worry." Huo Chang waved his hand. "Another force will join us. And with their support, we will be fine." Lingyun Academy was one of the most historical academies in the history of Dajin since it was established before Dajin was founded. In a courtyard in the depths of the academy, a middle-aged man with a long lean face and white side hairs looked solemn with a paper in his hand. The disciples of Class A from all houses skipped classes several times, and the number of disciples cultivating in the martial arts tower is getting smaller each day because they all went to the small shop named Origin Internet Club to play games. Even today, he received the report that several disciples had been late for classes by more than 1 hour. Ever since the establishment of Lingyun Academy, few students skipped classes because anyone who could enter the academy was an elite. It was why the big families wanted to send their descendants to the academy to learn and cultivate. However, several incidents happened within 1 month. Looking at the names of the talented young men and women on the report, he got enraged and slammed his hand on the table as he roared, What evil stuff has hooked them? Why didn't an Huey close down that shop? The middle-aged man slammed the table repeatedly with his huge hand and said, "We must put an end to this malpractice." Where's Ching Ching? Fang Qi asked Su Zixin. Don't you know? Su Zixin said in surprise, she's doing promotion for the official novel. Promotion? Fang Qi chuckled. That girl was taking this matter seriously, but he wondered how she was doing the promotion in this world without TV or internet. Su Zixin told him the promotion methods in this era. One was hiring workers to give out flyers in Dongguan Book Forest, and the other was running commercials by sending messages to people's communication jades. Of course, Dongguan Book Forest would recommend the special books such as Celestial Warrior to the public through their own channels. Shall we go and have a look? Su Zixin asked. Okay. Since he was a part of this business, he couldn't leave everything to others. It was good to check up on it. Lingyun Academy, the training field of Huang House, on the wide meadow, a tall woman who was wearing red leather armor and had a ponytail stood before the disciples and studied them carefully. Mu Hongzhu was the martial arts instructor of Class A in Huang House. These disciples in Class A were all the important descendants in their respective families, so their safety and learning were all significant. However, the martial arts class had started more than 1 hour ago and quite a few disciples were still missing. It was outrageous. In the past, the disciples of Lingyun Academy all valued strength, and the instructors never had to worry about class attendance. Besides, with the strict management in Lingyun Academy, no one had dared to ignore the rules here. However, quite a few disciples were missing in class today, and even Mu Hongzhu, who was even-tempered, had a dark expression on her face. At this time, she was taking attendance, trying to find the reckless disciples who skipped the class. Song Qing Feng. Here a drawn-out answer came from the distance. She looked up and saw a group of disciples racing to class. Mu Hongzhu's face turned dark. Where have you been? She remained calm on the surface. Embarrassed, Song Qing Feng, Lin Xiao and Su Luo scratched their heads and said earnestly, "Instructor, we were studying." They told the story about the internet cafe that Ye Xiao used to fool her father, Ye Song Tao. After hearing their words, Mu Hongzhu's expression turned even more unreadable. Glancing at them coldly, she asked, "You can learn martial arts and improve strength in that shop, which is why you went there. And you studied martial arts there until now." They looked at each other, finding her tone quite weird. However, they had no choice but to nod at this moment. "So, you are saying that I don't teach as well as that small shop?" Mu Hongzhu's expression turned darker. Song Qing Feng, Lin Xiao, Su Luo, Nalan Mingxiu arrived at this moment. When she heard Mu Hongzhu's rhetoric question, she touched her forehead with exasperation. A small shop teaches martial arts better than Lingyun Academy? Are you stupid? Nalan Mingxiu murmured to the three guys. Their explanation was offensive. "I will give you 1 minute to explain yourself." Enraged, Mu Hongzhu placed her hands on her waist and stared at them coldly. "Let me do it." After giving them a dirty look, Nalan Mingxiu decided to explain herself. Hearing Nalan Mingxiu admitting that they were too engrossed in playing and came late, Mu Hongzhu's face softened a bit. However, she got more confused. "You are saying that you are late because you were engrossed in watching the shop owner play Counter-Strike." Recently, she had heard the disciples mentioning the small shop named Origin more than once, but she took it as another entertainment establishment and hadn't spared a thought to it. When she heard that the small shop could increase one's strength and combat experience, she just regarded it as a place similar to Qin Mountain Beast Garden, which was indeed helpful to warriors. In her mind, it could assist with cultivation but didn't deserve any special attention. After all, what kind of cultivation method worked faster than cultivating in the martial arts tower? The Lingyun Martial Arts Tower was the pride of the academy. As an instructor of Lingyun Academy, that was her belief. Besides teaching the disciples in the academy, she had to cultivate as well, which left her no time to mind the things that were happening in the entertainment establishments. However, she was a bit curious about terms such as quickscope and flick-shotting, wondering how the elite disciples of the Ling Yun Academy became fans of these combat techniques that she had never heard before. Origin Internet Club launched a new game. Counter-Strike. There are new spiritual artifacts. Almost half of the disciples in this class were experienced players of Resident Evil, Diablo, and The Legend of the Sword and Fairy. Hearing of the new game, they began to whisper to each other. Mu Hongju's face turned cold again. Dongguan Book Forest was situated in a good location, it sat just across from Tianfu Street where Fang Qi had visited before. Right now, Shen Qingqing wasn't in a good mood. She had spent lots of energy on the writing and publishing the official novel since there were a lot of details that had to be added to the general plot. It was hard work for even a warrior to deal with. She had planned to promote the book so that it would be warmly received, but... Sir, can't you make an exception for me? Sitting across from Shen Qingqing was a middle-aged man who was wearing a green hat and a green robe. He looked very serious right now. Ms. Shen, it's not that we don't want to help you, but the thing is... I'm sure that you know the influence of Celestial Warrior. With the 9th volume coming out before schedule, we must promote it first, the middle-aged man said. Although the Celestial Warrior was only a novel, it had great influence here since even the young masters such as An Cheng and Yu Yang Cheng had heard of it. Even Nalan Hongguo knew this novel, which showed that it was popular in the upper-class circle of Zhuhua City. Since there were few entertainment options in this world, novels began to attract people's attention even though there weren't many of them around yet. While Celestial Warrior was being promoted, Dongguan Book Forest certainly didn't want to split resources onto a new book from Shen Qingqing, who was an inexperienced writer. Besides, Diablo. Yu Rui smirked. Can you really sell a book with such a weird name? Dongguan Book Forest is mean. Su Zixin looked a bit angry, feeling that they were being unfair to her good friend. Can't they give us 1 or 2 days? With a frown, Shen Qingqing sipped the fragrant tea and shook her head. It seems that we have to find another way. What else can we do? Su Zixin sat there sulkily. Fang Qi smirked and asked, the promotion here is just giving out flyers. What do you mean just giving out flyers? Su Zixin gave him a dirty look. Doesn't everyone do it that way? Mr. Fang, what good ideas do you have? She rolled her eyes and thought of Fang Qi's shop. Even if we can promote the book in your shop and ask your customers to buy it, the most that we can reach is 200 to 300 people, right? There were 1,000 copies. Unless each bought 5 to 6 books, they could never get all the books sold. More importantly, only a small portion of the players played Diablo. Fang Qi shrugged. He had planned to use the official novel to promote Diablo 2, and they would be getting the purpose wrong if they promoted the book in his shop instead. After a moment of thinking, Fang Qi beckoned at them and called them over before whispering something to them. Will it work? Shen Qingqing looked at Fang Qi in surprise, not totally understanding his wild idea. We won't know until we try, Fang Qi said. We can put the other books in a small bookstore, and we'll know the effect by then. Okay, obviously, Shen Qingqing was hesitant, but she nodded at last. I have a friend who owns a small bookstore. Despite its remote location, we can use it. Su Zixin stared at Fang Qi in doubt. Will it work? In the internet cafe, Nalan Hongguo, An Huawei, Wu Yangzhen, Su Tianji, and Yesong Tao were sitting in the lounge with Li Haoran. With the curtains pulled open, the sunshine shined into the building through the wall of glass, providing some brightness to the dark internet cafe. Xiaoyu, do us a favor and get us a few containers of Häagen-Dazs. An Huawei yelled. Glancing at the people around him, Li Haoran sighed, the work is all left to me. This kid. Their focus was obvious. Fang Qi performance in Counter-Strike today showed them the power of this new kind of weapons. Even without Fang Qi techniques, the weapons themselves were mature and excellent. Other people around them looked over and wanted to join in, but they didn't dare to walk up, let alone joining the conversation with Nalan Hongyu and An Huey here. A better option for them was to study the guns in-game. An Huey found that he had fallen in love with this snack, Häagen-Dazs, and had to have a container each day. While eating a mouthful of ice cream, he asked, "Do you mean, you youngsters will work together and establish a special organization to study these new spiritual artifacts?" "Something like that." Li Haoran nodded. In fact, it was brought up by Ms. Nalan. "You know, Mr. Fang is busy playing games each day and doesn't want to manage anything else. It astonished me that he actually agreed to be our technology advisor. What's good about establishing such a small organization?" Obviously, An Huey had his eyes on these new weapons. The city guards would look very dashing if they were equipped with such weapons. "Why don't you work with me, the Castellan? I'll provide the funds." With Nalan Hongyu watching on the side, An Huey decided to cut to the chase. Li Haoran gave him a bitter smile and said, "I'm afraid that it's not possible." "Why not?" An Huey said with a dark expression, "Do you think that I'll take advantage of you?" Mr. Fang said no. Li Haoran shook his head with a bitter smile. He said that he doesn't care what others do, no matter if it's studying the weapons in the game or making them. "We can't change anything about our agreement. What's wrong with this kid?" An Huey's face turned dark. Nalan Hongyu laughed and patted An Huey on his shoulder, saying, "The speed is the key. It seems that you were too late." For him, Nalan Mingxiu was his junior, and he naturally wouldn't be jealous of her. Besides, even if this type of spiritual artifacts could be produced, he probably wouldn't have the chance to use them. "No. I'll talk to Fang about it." Ye Songtao was unconvinced. "I'll talk to him too." Su Tianji was also unwilling to accept it. Of course, they would change their mind once Fang Qi rejected them. Could they force him to submit to them? They wouldn't dare to offend Nalan Hongyu, let alone that mysterious cultivator behind Fang Qi. After all, they could study the weapons however they liked, and Fang Qi would neither interfere or stop them. What Fang Qi wanted was some simple research with few conflicts of interest. As to the other people who craved these weapons, Fang Qi didn't care how they studied them either. For Nalan Hongyu, Counter-Strike was interesting, but it was less meaningful than the Legend of the Sword and Fairy, as well as Diablo. He would spend 1 to 2 hours to enjoy its fun, but he would mostly spend time in the Shu Mountain faction in the Legend of the Sword and Fairy to understand the principle of being gentle like water or playing Diablo. Su Tianji was very interested in these new spiritual artifacts, but since she hadn't finished playing the Legend of the Sword and Fairy yet, she wouldn't spend all her time on playing Counter-Strike. 2 hours each day was enough for her. Same thing applied to An Huey and Yu Yangzhen. After all, the benefits they got from playing Counter-Strike were neither cultivation strength nor the exquisite sword techniques in the Legend of the Sword and Fairy. The benefits that Counter-Strike offered was the concentration of mind, which wasn't for them. They would continue playing Diablo and the Legend of the Sword and Fairy. Of course, this didn't stop them from playing Counter-Strike occasionally since this game had no restrictions such as levels and experience points which existed in Diablo and the Legend of the Sword and Fairy. This game's main targets were young people who had just begun cultivation or warriors who wanted to improve concentration. Pang really heaved a sigh of relief, feeling like he could finally feel elated. As I expected, many people have felt threatened. Many upper-class figures in Zhuhua City came to the gathering. They almost filled the entire third floor of the Wind and Moon Pavilion. It was a wise decision to pull Huo Chang into our alliance. Seeing the big crowd, Pang really grinned. Task description: participate in the discussions about the basics for at least 3 kinds of guns. Task reward: the gaming cultivation room will be opened, and you will have 1-day access. Task details: this is truly scientific. The task reward was the gaming cultivation room. Although the system didn't give detailed information about this room, it must be something quite useful since it was offered as a reward by the system. Since the past rewards that the system offered, such as the T-virus and the rocket launcher, were all very powerful, Fang Qi was quite expectant of the gaming cultivation room, which he guessed must be something that could improve others' strengths. After all, he could use some strength himself. He couldn't rely on the system to deter people with bad intentions forever. Besides, if he must travel to other places to choose locations for new shops, his weak strength would be a problem. Fang Qi was now sitting in a research room in the Blue Flame Pavilion. It was set aside especially for their use. In the room were Nalan Mingxiu, Li Haoran, and several of the best artifact masters from the Blue Flame Pavilion. Li Haoran looked at the documents in his hands and asked, "Mr. Fang, do we really need to do research on 3 pistols? Can we add a submachine gun onto the list?" Fang Qi didn't answer. Instead, he stared at Nalan Mingxiu. 3 pistols then? Nalan Mingxiu's pretty face turned dark. "This wouldn't have happened if it weren't for you. Tickle me? This is what you get for tickling me." Fang Qi snorted quietly. However, one of the 3 pistols must be a magnum revolver or a Desert Eagle. Nalan Mingxiu felt like Fang Qi wouldn't give them all he had since it was their first time cooperating. After all, she had done that thing to Fang Qi. However, as a smart woman, she continued to bargain with Fang Qi around his baseline. Fang Qi shrugged. "It depends on if you can understand them." He wouldn't force them into a corner. After all, they had sworn to the agreement with the essence blood of cultivators and warriors, which meant that they would abide by the terms of the agreement if nothing unusual happened. As long as they were within the bounds of the agreement, he would provide them with more knowledge. "Mr. Fang, you can teach us whatever you can," a grey-haired middle-aged artifact master said. "We have been doing this for more than 100 years, and I'm sure that we have the ability to understand." A mature and plump woman in black who was sitting next to him said proudly, "Mr. Fang, don't underestimate us. If we can't understand it, then no one else can understand it in Zhuhua City. Is the information that you have this profound?" The guy's name was Wang Zhangjiu, and the woman's name was Chen Rong. In the Blue Flame faction, they were on the same level as Li Haoran. Li Haoran had been taken into the faction in an unusual process, which was why he enjoyed a high status at such a young age. These 2 artifact masters had high levels of skills in terms of making spiritual artifacts. Although they knew that Fang Qi had a mysterious and powerful cultivator behind him, they didn't believe that they wouldn't understand new knowledge around making spiritual artifacts. "It would be good if you can understand." There was a blackboard in the research room for drawing illustrations. Despite the fact that it was made differently, it had the same functions as those in Fang Qi's previous life. Fang Qi wrote 5 big words on the blackboard: "Enter the world of science." Then, he wrote, "The periodic table." Soon, voices came from the research room: "Read after me: lithium, beryllium, boron, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, fluorine, neon." Lithium, beryllium, boron, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, fluorine, neon. Sodium, magnesium, aluminum, silicon, phosphorus, sulfur, chlorine, argon. Sodium, magnesium, aluminum, silicon, phosphorus, sulfur, chlorine, argon. Wang Zhangjiu, Chen Rong, and the others recited after Fang Qi. After reading it for a long time, they finally memorized these strange words. "Well, why do we need this stuff?" Finally, Li Haoran asked in bafflement. These words sounded like spiritual spells, but nothing happened after they recited them. "Good question." Fang Qi wrote 5 more words on the board: "Scientific way of making artifacts." "Do you know why the bullets that your Blue Flame Pavilion made are of such poor quality?" Wang Zhangjiu and Chen Rong's faces twitched, but they couldn't rebuff him. They had spent lots of time and energy on them, but the bullets that they made were still inferior to the worst bullets in the game. It is because you don't have the basic knowledge supporting you. Fang Qi pointed at the big blackboard and said, "Now, we'll begin with middle school level chemistry. After that, we'll move on to middle school level physics. After you've mastered all the basic knowledge, I'll teach you how to make bullets." Oh! They looked at rows of lofty letters on the big blackboard, feeling awed. When Fang Qi finished the class, it was already the morning of the second day. The concepts such as nitroglycerin reaction equation and the ratio of propellant still resonated in their minds. After only a short night, they felt like the door to a new world was opened. After staying up all night, they were in high spirits, except for Fang Qi. "Today, you've learned the basic knowledge. Later, I'll teach you high school level math, chemistry, and physics, etc." Fang Qi stretched and yawned. "If I cultivated all night like this, I might be able to pass the heavenly tribulation and ascend now." Pass heavenly tribulation? Ascend? Nalan Mingxiu looked at Fang Qi curiously. "Well, it is quite complicated to make pistols." After Fang Qi left, the people in the research room burst into lively discussions. "No wonder these weapons are so difficult to create," Wang Zhangjiu said. "They need such deep knowledge, such as middle school level chemistry." "According to Mr. Fang, middle school level chemistry is just the basics," Chen Rong said. "If we want to understand the process of propellant, we must learn the high school level chemistry and physics. We have a long way to go before we can understand it completely. By teaching us the gun-making process right after teaching us the basics, Mr. Fang is shortening our learning curve." "Science? Is it the artifact-making method created by that mysterious cultivator behind Mr. Fang?" Li Haoran murmured, "There exists such a figure in this world? Does it mean that he's even more powerful than our master?" "Master said that there's always someone better." "It's so true. Middle school level chemistry, middle school level physics. How come they sound so weird?" Nalan Mingxiu was deep in thought. For some reason, she thought of the elementary school students that Fang Qi had once mentioned. The casinos, Qin Mountain Beast Garden, and even brothels, which had been highly profitable businesses, were now feeling the impact. Under the push of certain people, the upper-class figures in Zhuhua City began to turn their attention to the unusual phenomena. Started by Pang Ruli and led by Huo Chang, they gathered together to discuss how to deal with this small shop that came from the blue. Qin Bing came for this purpose. As the director of Ling Yun Academy, Qin Bing supervised the four houses, Heaven, Earth, Xian, and Huang. His power was only next to that of the old academy master and the vice masters. In the past years, he had gradually taken over the responsibility of making rules for the entire academy and had become a part of the management of Ling Yun Martial Arts Tower. The rumors said that he would become a vice master of the academy after one of the current vice masters retired. It was even possible that he could become the academy master and manage the entire Ling Yun Academy in the future. However, in this key period of his career, some disciples kept skipping classes and went to play in the internet cafe. He couldn't allow such things to continue. Both the disciples who skipped classes and Origin Internet Club became his targets. With his identity, he naturally sat at the head of the first table. The guests sitting at this table had high status. If he hadn't organized the meeting, Pang Ruli wouldn't have been qualified to sit among them. As the manager of the Wind and Moon Pavilion, Xiang Heking took care of most of the affairs in the business, and the owner of the business didn't come to the gathering. "Master Huo, what do you propose?" Wearing a silky black robe, Xiang Heking looked as meticulous as the Wind and Moon Pavilion which was under his management. "In my opinion, we should ask In Huawei to close the shop." While Qin Bing spoke, the white hairs on his temples shook with anger. "Elder Qin! Calm down! Calm down! You're busy managing Ling Yun Academy, and I guess that you didn't have time to follow the news in Zhuhua City." Huo Chang cupped his hands and said, "After some investigation, I found that this shop has a solid background and powerful customers. If we try to close the shop, we might encounter some resistance. Is there anyone who dares to work against Lingyun Academy? Qin Bing didn't used to think that this whole incident was a big issue, but he began to realize that this shop wasn't as simple as he had imagined from the scale of this gathering and the great concern which the influential figures here showed. Huo Chang leaned over and said one word in his deep voice, Nalan. The head. Qin Bing's face turned grim. He stroked his beard and said, this issue is not simple. For the time being, we must be careful with our methods, Huo Chang said. Master Huo, what's your plan? Pang Ruli asked. First, we can cut into the issue from the perspective of the side effects, Huo Chang said. Side effects? Pang Ruli asked curiously, the shop has been open for a long time, so it shouldn't have caused any side effects, right? If we are picky, Xiang Heking snorted, how about its customers getting drunk and making trouble in my business? Huo Chang chuckled, it doesn't count. He knew that such small incidents couldn't overturn Origin Internet Club. He clapped his hands, and a young man who looked like him quickly came out with documents. He told this young man, Feng, distribute them to the guests. Yes, father. The young man nodded and handed the documents to the guests. August 3rd. In the southern region of Zhuhua City, Wang Xiuan, who was 16 years old, got addicted to games to the point that he couldn't tell the virtual world from reality. He jumped down from a 15-meter tall cliff, yelling sword control technique. He died of the fatal injuries sustained from the fall. August 5th. In the southwest region of Zhuhua City, Xue Chengui, who was a free warrior, wanted to get money for playing games, so he robbed an old man from the Yang family. He was imprisoned by Zhuhua City for robbery. August 9th, Qin Bing read the documents and asked in astonishment, are they real? After looking at his son, Huo Chang put on a meaningful smile. About 80% of the stories were exaggerated, but they looked real. They had prepared the documents for a long time. Otherwise, the gathering would have been held earlier. Huo Chang nodded and said in an indignant tone, these games look harmless, but in fact, look at the real cases in your hands. Who can say that the games have no side effects? Every player keeps thinking of playing the games once they get hooked. Isn't it the side effect? Huo Chang asked in a loud voice, like drugs, they are addictive. They can make people lose their mind. That is why we must boycott this small shop and these games. Huo Chang said coldly, we must declare war on this stuff. Besides, you must never try anything from this small shop. Huo Chang looked around and said, otherwise, you'll get addicted and can never get yourself out. His words struck fear into many people's mind, and they decided to avoid the games as if they were poisonous snakes. I hope that you can spread these words to your family, relatives, and customers and ask them to join the boycott. Well said. Qin Bing slammed the table and stood up as he shouted. I'll do my best. At least, none of the disciples of the Lingyun Academy will set foot into this small shop in the future. After opening his shops in the morning, Fang Qi went back to sleep and didn't get up until near noon. When he went downstairs, Fang Qi found that there were only a few people in the shop. He glanced around and asked Zhang Xiaoyu, what's wrong? How would I know? The lowly who was sitting behind the counter looked around the shop in bafflement, saying, there were only a few customers this morning. Strange. Usually, the shop would be full at this hour, but it was still empty today. Zhang Xiaoyu was anxious. What happened? Then, she glanced at Fang Qi. Hey! Why do you look so calm? Don't worry. I don't care if they come or not. Fang Qi waved his hand casually. Since the system didn't set a target for the number of customers, he didn't care that much. Besides, now that he had finished the new task, he was wondering about the game cultivation room. Game cultivation room? What on earth is it? Fang Qi turned on the interface and clicked on the task reward button in a hurry. Key to the game cultivation room function, connect to the game cultivation room instruction, please use it when no one is around. So many restrictions. Mumbling, Fang Qi returned to upstairs and closed the door. He sat cross-legged on his bed and turned on the system interface. Then, he clicked yes on the option of use the key to the game cultivation room. Instantly, Fang Qi felt like the lights around him dimmed. The scene before him blurred as if many strands of data flowed around him. He felt as if his entire body floated in the air, and the old world disappeared. He felt like the streaks of data took him to a strange place. When his feet touched solid ground again, he found himself in a pitch-black space without any source of light. While he was wondering where he was, light beams appeared before him and illuminated several familiar figures. They looked vivid but stood there like statues. With a crew cut and a brawny body, the first figure held a rocket launcher in his hands. He was the Special Forces soldier, Chris. The second figure wore heavy armor and had a shield in his left hand and a scepter in his right hand. He was a paladin. The third figure wore a blue and white daoist robe and carried a long sword behind his back, looking forward with intense eyes. He was Li Xiaoao. These are. Fang Qi stared at them in astonishment. Glaring at the ancient-looking sword with the black sheath and golden patterns, he remembered clearly that it was the Wuchen sword that he had used to battle Baiyu in the Legend of Sword and Fairy. He also remembered using the golden shield named Ancient's Pledge in the paladin's hand to fight monsters. As for Chris, Fang Qi remembered that he had left the rocket launcher in Chris's hand after he practiced it on the tyrant and exited the game. Your game characters, the system said. Isn't this a cultivation room? Fang Qi asked immediately, why did you bring out my game characters? Then, Fang Qi saw a line of description under the game cultivation room on the system interface. Instruction: activate your game character and begin cultivation. The more you're in sync with them, the more experience you will get. All senses in the cultivation room such as pain are in the grade of real and can't be adjusted. The flow of time in the cultivation room is 365 to 1 compared with the real world. The cultivation room is mainly used to increase combat abilities and nothing else. One must think carefully before using it. 365:1. Fang Qi said in surprise, does it mean that 1 year of cultivation here is equivalent to 1 day in the outside world? It sounded lofty, but the cultivators in the outside world cultivate for dozens and even hundreds of years at a time. What's the use of only 1 year? Don't make a judgment before you try, the system replied. Try it. Fang Qi looked at his 3 game characters curiously. Among them, Li Xiaoao had the highest strength. Knowing that he could acquire skills, experiences, and cultivation strength, Fang Qi activated his game character Li Xiaoao since he was now into the sword techniques of the Shu Mountain faction. The moment that Fang Qi activated the character, a whole world spread under Li Xiaoang's feet and swallowed the darkness around them. The scenery changed into the ancient world in the Legend of the Sword and Fairy. Li Xiaoao was the only game character facing him. Expressionlessly, Li Xiaoao pointed the fingers of his right hand to the sky. The sky, the earth, mountains, lake, trees. All the spiritual essence around them gathered together and formed a horrifyingly huge spiritual essence sword. Heavenly Sword. It was the heavenly sword that Fang Qi had mastered with proficiency. As soon as Li Xiaoao waved his finger, the huge spiritual essence sword crashed down like a giant mountain. Before the sword came, the sword energies emitting from it cut into Fang Qi body like a blade. In the blink of an eye, it left many scratches on his body. Having practiced the heavenly sword from the basic level to mastery, Fang Qi knew the great power of the heavenly sword more than anyone else. If he allowed the huge sword to crash down, his body would be torn into pieces by the sword energies alone before the sword cut into him, despite the fact that his body had been strengthened by the T-virus. Stop! 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 Fang Qi cried out immediately. In fact, Fang Qi didn't expect the sword to stop. Since he was in the game cultivation room, he assumed that he could be resurrected. However, To his surprise, the sword paused in the air, and the system interface began calculation at the same time. Cultivation, Li Xiaoao, Heavenly Sword Synchronization, Heavenly Sword 0% Total Synchronization, 0% Skill Experiences Gained / Characters Cultivation Strength Gained, 0 Assessment. You're not here to cultivate. Fang Qi heaved a sigh of relief and felt exasperated while he looked at the system interface. How can I battle the heavenly sword right away? Can't you give me something like an ordinary sword control technique? Please make your own choice. Make my own choice? How? Fang Qi looked carefully and found options at the top of the game cultivation room. He clicked into the page and saw a more detailed breakdown beneath each character. For example, here was the description under Chris. Total synchronization, 62.11% guns, 75.3% combat, 70.66% cold weapons, 62.54%. Characters weapon owned, unlimited rocket launcher. Complete synchronization available. Yes, complete synchronization. Fang Qi asked, what does it mean? Quickly, an explanation appeared. Explanation: the player can temporarily possess all the techniques and power of this character. The synchronization time limit is determined by the synchronization rate and the player's own strength. The threshold of complete synchronization is to clear stages in the game, reach 20% total synchronization rate, and possess the important item of this character. In other words, by cultivating in this room, I can quickly increase my strength and also temporarily gain all the character's strengths. However, Fang Qi glanced at his total synchronization with Li Xiaoao. It was only 7%. He pondered and asked, it sounds good, but where can I get an important item such as Li Xiaoao's Wuchen sword? The system answered, host, please do more tasks. Fang Qi said, you are tricking me to do more work. It seemed like he had to work harder on cultivation. He clicked on Li Xiaoao in the system interface and selected to cultivate the sword control technique. Soon, a simple-looking steel sword hovered in the air beside Fang Qi's right hand, and another sword appeared by Li Xiaoao's right hand. They stood facing each other. Without an expression, Li Xiaoao waved his finger, and his sword slashed toward Fang Qi's chest with sharp whistling noise like a shooting star. F***ck. Fang Qi cussed silently. With no time to think, he jumped to one side and felt a burning pain on his back. Disregarding the wound on his back, he dodged the sword that was turning blurry due to its high speed and dancing like silver snakes. Obviously, Li Xiaoao was much more powerful when he was moving on his own rather than under Fang Qi control. While dodging the attacks desperately, Fang Qi controlled the long sword beside him to block the next attack from his opponent. It was a merciless battle. Fang Qi had regretted leveling up Li Xiaoao so well. The academy rarely held disciple gatherings of this scale, which was why many disciples were puzzled by this unusual meeting. Why did they gather all of us here? Did anything unusual happen in the academy? It's said that the meeting is held upon Elder Qin's request. I wonder what happened that even he was alerted. The daily operation of the houses was usually managed by the senior instructors, which was why people were surprised that the lofty director decided to talk to them in person. At this moment in Class A of House Huang, Song Qingfeng, Lin Xiao and Su Luo were looking at Mu Hongzhu and a middle-aged male instructor beside her with dejection, begging, "Instructor, isn't the punishment a bit too severe?" The male instructor's name was Chen Zhong, and he managed the entire Class A. Hearing Song Qingfeng and the others' complaints, he shook his head helplessly and said, "You're unfortunate that you were caught in the moment of Elder Qin's fury. What were you thinking when you skipped the class to play games? It's your bad luck that you are now being punished to warn others." Mu Hongzhu also sighed slightly, feeling like the punishment was a bit severe. She wondered who had come up with the idea of dragging the elite disciples of her class up to the platform and scolding them in front of thousands of people as a way of deterring others. "I'll try to communicate with Elder Qin and see if I can reduce the punishment, that's all that I can do," Mu Hongzhu said with a faint sigh, thinking that the method of forbidding all the disciples from entering that small shop was vicious and effective. However, she thought that it was a bit too much to reprimand the disciples in front of thousands of others. Nalan Mingxiu gave the 3 victims a condolent look since she had only gotten some deduction in credits. Meanwhile, a fatty who was standing in the back of the class wiped cold sweat from his forehead and thought, I was lucky that I didn't have class that day. If it were me who got into this kind of trouble, I probably would have been expelled from Lingyun Academy. I wonder what will happen to Qi small shop after this. Can he keep the business open? Wang Tai looked at the gloomy sky and heaved a heavy sigh. Meanwhile, Fang Qi was being hunted down by his game character. In a jade-like green bamboo forest, a young man who was about 16 years old stepped on a stalk of bamboo lightly like a bird and flew into the distance when the bamboo bounced back. As soon as he jumped away, a silver light followed him closely and turned the stalk of bamboo into pieces. About 1 month had passed in the game cultivation room. That silver light followed Fang Qi like a shadow and got close to his back. Then, a silver sword energy flashed behind him and blocked the chilly light which was chasing Fang Qi like a ghost. The sword energies knocked against each other several times in the blink of an eye with clanking noises resonating in the area. Then, everything turned quiet. Cultivation, Li Xiaoao, Sword Control Technique Synchronization, Sword Control Technique 50% Total Synchronization, 10% Skill Experience gained / Characters Cultivation Strength gained, 1320/280 Assessment, your sword control technique has improved. Work harder, and you might master this sword technique. Who? After coming out from the respawn station, Fang Qi still looked scared. He had found that Li Xiaoao was able to unleash double the power of the sword control technique. Even if Fang Qi had the same proficiency, he couldn't win, let alone the fact that his understanding of the sword control technique in the real world was really low. At this moment, Fang Qi suddenly heard a sharp whistling noise coming through the air and saw a bolt of sword energy flying toward him. Surprised, Fang Qi subconsciously blocked the sword energy with the sword control technique and began to run. Meanwhile, Zhang Xiaoyu sat behind the counter in boredom. She murmured with a pout, the business today is so slow. And the owner isn't live streaming. I'm bored. Where's everyone anyway? When Su Tianji came in with Feng Hua, Yuexin, and Xiao Yulv, she was also curious. What's wrong today? Where's everyone? Since the Liu Yundaist palace was far from Zhuhua city, and she stayed away from worldly business, it was natural that she knew nothing about the situation. No idea. It's quite strange today. Lowly Zhang Xiaoyu said listlessly. Forget it. I don't care. She glanced around. The owner is out as well. He's upstairs, and I don't know what he's doing, Zhang Xiaoyu answered with a pout. He isn't live streaming today. Su Tianji thought for a while and said, then, I'll play the Legend of Sword and Fairy for a while. Xiaoyu, get us 3 containers of Häagen-Dazs. Okay. Hearing the only customers today asking for Häagen-Dazs as usual, Zhang Xiaoyu felt a bit better. However, she felt gloomy again and stared at the Häagen-Dazs sulkily. When can I have a taste of Häagen-Dazs? Besides Lingyun Academy, other places in Zhuhua City also began to boycott the Origin Internet Club and the games. In this world, the main promotional method was through giving out flyers, and many shops in the busy locations in Zhuhua City such as the Tianfu Street and Zhuhua Road sent workers out to give flyers to passing by cultivators and warriors. Chen Xiaolang, who called himself Young Master Chen, was a distant relative of the Chen family in Jingxi. Since the Chen family in Zhuhua City had several high-level cultivators, it was quite powerful in the southern part of Zhuhua City, which made Chen Xiaolang a big bully. Everyone called him Bully Chen. Recently, young Master Chen got tired of the southern side of the city and would occasionally come to the busiest Tianfu Street for fun. Today, a worker standing before a luxurious-looking shop handed him a flyer. What's this? If he was in the southern side of the city, he wouldn't spare a glance at it. However, he looked up at the lofty-looking shop and accepted the flyer. He was bored anyway. He glanced at it and froze. The games in this shop are so fun that people get addicted to them. Right. The worker in green explained solemnly, the stuff in this shop is very vicious. Young master, please read this part. He pointed at the most eye-catching paragraphs. August 5th. In the southwest region of Zhuhua City, Xue Chengui, who was a free warrior, wanted to get money for playing games, so he robbed an old man from Yang family. He was imprisoned by Zhuhua City for robbery. August 3rd. In the southern Zhuhua City. The worker in green read the stories one by one and then said to the astonished Chen Xiaolang smugly, these games are addictive drugs that can make people lose their mind. Right now, all the big forces including Lingyun Academy and Southern Business Alliance are boycotting the shop. All the people in Zhuhua City are avoiding these things as if they are poisonous snakes. I warn you, don't ever touch them. Hiss. There's such a shop in the city. Young Master Chen asked in a grave voice, where is this shop? It's in the east of the city, the servant in green said, but if you want to destroy the shop and beat those villains, you must be careful. That shop has a powerful background. Destroy the shop. Young Master Chen looked at him in bafflement and then waved his hand. Little Wu. Yes, young master. The brawny man standing behind him answered with respect. Get a carriage, and we are going to the east of the city. Get a carriage. The brawny man whose nickname was Little Wu asked in bafflement, are we going and destroying the shop? Not at all. Young Master Chen grinned with bright eyes. This place sounds exciting. Let's go and see if it's really so fun. Still clutching the flyer, the worker in green was stunned. Seriously? However, this voice was quickly overpowered by a lot of sarcastic words. Nonsense! If they want to improve their strength, why didn't they go to Lingyun Martial Arts Tower? Don't tell me that these disciples from Class A don't have enough credits. Some young disciples shouted indignantly, it was their excuse so that they could go enjoy the entertainment. They are lucky that they've just entered the academy. If they continue like this until next year, they probably would have been kicked out of the school. Hearing the gossip from the crowds, Song Qingfeng felt his veins bulging on his forehead. He clenched his fists and gathered the warrior qi in the center of his hands. If someone noticed it, they would have realized that he was in the late stage of the official warrior realm. Despite the relatively fast advancement process in the official warrior realm, ordinary warriors had to spend years on training to achieve it. Even for someone with Song Qingfeng's talent and resources, they wouldn't be able to reach this level until half a year later. Young Master Song, what shall we do now? Lin Xiao asked uneasily. How should I know? Song Qingfeng answered angrily. They had been in the top tier of Class A, but now they became the laughingstock of everyone in the academy, even the instructors looked at them with anger in their eyes. It didn't feel good. Su Luo put his arms around his head and said painfully, will they really kick us to the classes for wastrels next year? I don't think so. Song Qingfeng inhaled deeply, feeling depressed while thousands of pairs of eyes stared at them with scorn and contempt. Then, are we going to the internet cafe today or not? Lin Xiao asked again. Are you stupid? Didn't you hear that the instructors would watch us closely? After a moment of consideration, Song Qingfeng said, I'll take a break first. On the other side, Lan Yan looked at the furious Song Qingfeng and others who were walking away and said in a wary tone, Ms. Nalan, the situation looks bad, I know. Nalan Mingxiu looked calm. The situation is getting out of control. How about, Lan Yan said with some hesitation, shall we report the truth to the management of the academy? No, Nalan Mingxiu shook her head. Who would believe us if we tell them that the games in a small shop can improve our strength better than the Lingyun Martial Arts Tower? Even if Qin Bing and most of the people believe us, Nalan Mingxiu turned her bright eyes toward Lan Yan and asked, the status of the Lingyun Martial Arts Tower would be in danger. Do you think Qin Bing will allow such a thing to happen? Lan Yan was at a loss for words, knowing that the whole thing concerned the foundation of Lingyun Academy. Then, what should we do now? Lan Yan asked, can we ask help from that mysterious senior in Mr. Fang's shop? Nalan Mingxiu said, that senior is indeed deep and mysterious, but he is obviously restrained by something. Otherwise, he wouldn't have to spend so much effort on training Mr. Fang. He even harmed his own realm to inject essence into Mr. Fang's body. This was her explanation for Fang Qi fast improvement of strength. She was smart enough to doubt certain things, but she wasn't someone to resort to illegal actions. As meticulous as she was, she never liked to touch totally unknown stuff or do things that she wasn't sure of. Besides, the situation now isn't as the same as hundreds of years ago. Hundreds of years ago, the powerful warriors and grand cultivators could do whatever they wanted, including slaughtering a whole city. However, if they tried doing such things at this era, they would be put into the underground cells in the heavenly prison of Jingxi. Hundreds of years had passed since that ancient family used powerful strength to suppress the chaotic society into a peaceful world. In today's society, even the powerful figures didn't dare to use their strength however they wanted. Then, we'll sit back and wait for whatever comes our way. Lan Yan asked in bafflement, it's not your style, Ms. Nalan. This situation is indeed tricky. Nalan Mingxiu furrowed her pretty slim eyebrows as she took out 2 black cloaks that she had prepared and handed one to Lan Yan. We'll change into these later. Why? Nalan Mingxiu said as if it were obvious, so we can go to the internet cafe. Oh! Don't we need to find a solution? We will find a solution. What? Meanwhile, in the instructor's office, Mu Hongzhu asked in astonishment, the Lingyun list will be combined into the joint list of 3 major academies in Dajin? And there will be a national examination across Dajin. We must strengthen the training of the elite disciples. To show everyone the strength of Lingyun Academy, Director Qin is behind the push of this national examination. Everyone who is on the Lingyun list can enter the national examination. This national examination will be supervised by the high-level representatives from all the academies. In the game cultivation room, sword energies and metal colliding noises rang out from the bamboo forest. One of the swords moved with a light and magical rhythm, looking like a dragon. The other sword struggled to block the attacks in an orderly manner, and it was holding up. Neither of them gained the upper hand. After 100 rounds, Fang Qi could no longer block the attacks and thus withdrew his sword. Cultivation, Li Xiaoao, Sword Control Technique Synchronization, Sword Control Technique 70% Total Synchronization, 12.890% Skill Experience gained / Characters Cultivation Strength gained, 2756/486 Assessment, you are proficient at this sword technique. Fang Qi exhaled deeply at this information. He had realized that the more advanced he got with the sword control technique, the more difficult it became to improve. It wasn't easy to move from the proficient level to the master level even with the help of the game cultivation room. Now that he had passed the threshold and was able to cultivate the innumerable sword scroll, he decided to master it first so that he would have a powerful sword technique with him. More than 2 months had passed in the game cultivation room. Fang Qi quickly selected the cultivation of innumerable sword scroll on the system interface. Standing across from him, Li Xiaoao waved his hand and summoned back the steel sword. The sword stood before him and then shot up into the sky. In the sky, the sword split into 2, then 2 into 4, and 4 into 8. The pattern repeated until the sky was filled with dense sword energies like a cloud of swords. F***ck. Fang Qi cussed silently and ran. His butt was about to be kicked again. Song King Feng's face turned dark. He had become notorious in the academy since everyone from the instructors to the disciples in every house knew about him. What did you say? Enraged, Lin Xiao wanted to dash over to them but was stopped by someone. What? You want to mess with us? Seeing others look their way, Lu Shijia got more blatant in his taunting, little kids from the Huang house. They were disciples of the Xian house, where the threshold of entrance was the Master Warrior Realm. After just being punished by the academy, Song Qingfeng and the others shouldn't cause trouble. Also, even if they did, they were no match for their opponents. Lin Xiao turned his head and saw that Song Qingfeng was pulling him back. The latter roared in a deep voice, "Let's go." "Hey! I thought you had some balls, but I was wrong." The three guys were furious while they walked away. "Young Master Song, we'll just forget the whole thing." When Song Qingfeng stopped walking, Su Luo asked the question that was on his mind. "They were counting on us to rush over. Didn't you see that?" Song Qingfeng said with a dark expression, "Do you think a warrior can defeat a master warrior?" Su Luo was silent. Even if they could defeat those guys, they would get themselves into more trouble at this moment right after their punishment. Despite his fury, Song Qingfeng didn't lose his mind. "What should we do now?" Lin Xiao asked. "We'll just forget the whole thing. We must work harder." Song Qingfeng said through gritted teeth, "We must reach the Master Warrior Realm as soon as possible." "Work harder." The other two's faces twitched while they looked at Song Qingfeng. "How?" "Work in the internet cafe and charge at the Master Warrior Realm." Although their strength had grown, it was not enough. After all, the time since they started cultivating was not long. It was the only way for them to improve their strength faster than others. No other method was as good as this one. Su Luo froze for a moment before saying, "Young Master Song, can we still go to the internet cafe?" Old Ghost Qin must have stationed spies there. They stated that they are prohibiting all the disciples from playing games. Now, Director Qin had become Old Ghost Qin in their minds. "I'm afraid that we'll be kicked out of the school before we can improve our strength if we are caught." Su Xiao said, "You're really brave." Soon, they had walked to the gate of the academy. Su Luo looked up and saw two familiar figures slipping out. "Ugh! How come those two look so familiar? Why are they wearing cloaks while leaving the academy? They're acting so sneakily." "Cloaks?" Song Qingfeng furrowed his eyebrows while he looked at those two figures. "I have an idea. Damn it! I should have asked him for the address." With several servants walking behind him, Chen Xiaolang cussed while he glanced at the shops on the street. "How can King find this place?" Suddenly, young Master Chen saw a team of patrolling city guards marching over. "Little Wu, go and ask them. I must find this place today." He kicked the butt of the man named Little Wu, and the latter trotted to the city guards and asked, "Would you please tell me where the Origin Internet Club is? Walk down the street to the end and turn left." The captain glanced at him and said, "But I warn you not to make trouble, otherwise you'll be punished." "Okay. Okay. We'll not make trouble." Little Wu nodded enthusiastically. The city guard's loud reply reached young Master Chen behind them, and he mumbled, "This small shop has some background then. Let's go and have a look." Soon, he came to the shop and saw the extraordinary glass walls which looked quite fancy among the surrounding white walls and black tiles. "Are the walls pure glass? Aren't they afraid that the walls might get damaged by someone?" Curiously, young Master Chen knocked on the glass door and so did his servants, making clanking sounds. "Och! Be careful!" Young Master Chen yelled immediately, "Don't you dare break this door!" "Yes! Yes! Yes!" The servants pulled back their hands in a hurry. The glass was not only fragile but very expensive. As servants, they couldn't afford to break this big glass door which was quite pricey. Seeing his servants moving their hands, young Master Chen pushed open the door carefully and looked inside. The decoration was totally different from the styles of this world. The simple and grand-looking counter and the rows of unknown square-shaped spiritual artifacts on the black stone desks that were as smooth as mirrors made him feel like he had entered another world. "Hiss! This shop is interesting." He beckoned at his servants and said with joy, "Come in." All of you come in. After his servants came in, he glanced back and saw several figures behind them. Two petite figures glanced around outside the door. Ms. Nalan, no one is watching. Okay. Let's go in. Then, two figures who were wrapped tightly in black cloaks slipped in quietly. What the FK? Chen Xiaolang was stroking his chin in bafflement when several other figures walked toward the door from outside. These figures walked so stiffly that they looked like zombies, and their rotten faces scared Chen Xiaolang. What the FK are these things? The zombie that was walking in the front of the group pushed open the door, and the figures following him slipped into the shop with greater agility than monkeys, startling Chen Xiaolang. Ha 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 ha! I told you that we would be fine to dress up as zombies. The three zombies laughed, and then one of them pulled his mask off and revealed his handsome face. They are just masks. Chen Xiaolang relaxed with relief. At this moment, another zombie said, I've made a detailed study plan. We can play the Legend of the Sword and Fairy 3 hours each day. Through practicing the sword control technique, we can master it sooner. Then, we'll play 2 hours of Counter-Strike, which will help with our concentration, and it will benefit our cultivation. For the last hour we'll play Diablo. Follow my plan, and we'll surely reach the Master Warrior realm. You're talking about playing games, right? Even I can see that. Chen Xiaolang got more confused. And you call that a study plan? Meanwhile, two instructors from Lingyun Academy who had been watching the shop were confused. They looked at each other, wondering, what were those things that just entered, at the counter? Wow! Your cloaks even have ears. So cute! Looking at the black triangle-shaped furry ears on the hoods of the black cloaks, stars appeared in Zhang Xiaoyu's big eyes. Ms. Nalan bought them. Lan Yan's pretty face blushed. They are the newest cloaks from Xiun Pavilion, and they can cover one's aura, Nalan Mingxiu said earnestly, the old style doesn't look as good. Lan Yan. Can I touch the ears? Zhang Xiaoyu reached out her hand expectantly. Ugh! Embarrassed, Lan Yan considered her request. Before she could open her mouth, Zhang Xiaoyu shrieked and almost fell from her chair when she saw the rotten faces appearing behind Lan Yan. Fang Qi, who had just come down from upstairs, dug out his weapon at the sight without thinking. Sir! Don't fire! It is us! Seeing Fang Qi digging out the rocket launcher, Song Qingfeng and his buddies jumped up with fright and yelled immediately. Fang Qi! Zhang Xiaoyu! Lan Yan! Nalan Mingxiu! On the side, young Master Chen gave her a thumbs up with tears on his face. This lowly knows me. The academy forbids you from playing in my shop. Fang Qi rolled his eyes. Owner, how come you're not surprised? Zhang Xiaoyu looked at Fang Qi curiously. Fang Qi glanced at the hot sun outside and mumbled, it's just one of the rules from schools that forbid students from entering the internet cafes and swimming in the rivers on their way from school. It's nothing surprising. TL note, this is quite common in China where students are forbidden from playing games at all. Sir, what did you say? The others looked at him, confused. Nothing, Fang Qi said while touching his nose. It's why you sneaked into my shop. Of course. We put a lot of thought into how to get into the shop without being caught. Lin Xiao said with a laugh. I bet there are spies outside of the door. Okay, we'll go and play games. Seeing the guys paying and walking to their computers, Zhang Xiaoyu looked touched. Owner, your customers are so loyal. They came to support your business at such great risks. Fang Qi face twitched while he said awkwardly, there are players who go to the internet cafe at greater risks. Greater risks? Leaning her head to one side, Zhang Xiaoyu stared at Fang Qi and murmured doubtfully, I've seen no one like that. You have seen one of them. Fang Qi sat down before a computer. Looking at the young guys and girls with youthful passion on their faces, he remembered his old life where he went from a young game addict to a professional gamer and the contemptuous looks people cast at him during the process. He remembered his old battlefields and teammates. Subconsciously, he shook his head and smiled self-mockingly, I'm an old retiree, and it's no use to bury myself in memories. Meanwhile, Xiao Yul, who stood behind Su Tianji watching her play, saw Song Qingfeng and the others with masks in their hands. He rolled his eyes and thought, so that's... After some consideration, an idea dawned on him, and his eyes lit up. On the other side, young Master Chen finally got his wish of playing the despicable games. According to his request, Fang Qi recommended Counter-Strike and Diablo to him since both could be played in teams. This guy activated both games at the same time and activated Counter-Strike for each of his servants while he was doing it. After all, it was easy to spend money that wasn't his. While touching the almost empty pocket, young Master Chen thought, tomorrow, I'll ask Dad for more money. Ha 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 ha. This is fun. On the screen, he fired repeatedly while his servants fled desperately. Xiao Wu, hurry up and call over young Master Yang and young Master Yu. Chen Xiaolang yelled between his wild laughs. Da 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 da. Diablo 2 wasn't the most popular game in the internet cafe right now, not because it wasn't fun, but because the sword control technique was more appealing to cultivators and warriors. While some of them began to master the sword control technique, some old players returned to Diablo, and among them were Nalan Hongyu, Elder Fu, Song Qingfeng, and his buddies. Compared with the legend of the sword and fairy, the monsters in Diablo that were lurking in the darkness to launch sneak attacks gave the players the thrill of adventures. Each of the games in Fang Qi shop maintained the feel of the original versions, including the combination of skills in the Diablo and the spiritual spells and sword techniques in the Legend of the Sword and Fairy that were more powerful than the player's own martial arts techniques and spiritual spells. Besides, the buffs in the game and proper arrangement made those techniques more powerful than those in the real world. For example, when Fang Qi played the Paladin, all he had to do was to use the skill Holy Shield, drink potions, and use Blessed Hammer to kill all the monsters. He didn't need to do anything. Therefore, when players fought the monsters and the boss, they could handle most of the situations as long as they could use the skills with proficiency. This way, the players with lower strength in the real world, such as Song Qingfeng and his buddies, could still play the game even when they encountered high-level bosses. However, it didn't mean that the player's own techniques were useless. For example, when Nalan Hongyu played Diablo with Elder Fu, they had consciously combined their own combat techniques and skills into the game, so they could kill monsters faster and handle special situations. This was another reason why Song Qingfeng and others decided to spend 1 hour on Diablo on top of leveling up faster. They treated the games purely as games before, but they were getting more serious now. Young Master Lin. Let's see if we can master these basic techniques. Don't we have the sword control technique to learn? I barely have time for one. Lin Xiao immediately complained. Then, we focus on one. In the real world, we can't use the techniques and spells that we don't master. 6 hours later, it was dark outside. Song Qingfeng and his buddies put their masks back on and got ready to leave the internet cafe. Lin Xiao opened the door and glanced outside stealthily. It looks fine, Lin Xiao said in a low voice. Go. 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 Hurry up. Song Qingfeng waved his hand, and they ran out from the door before walking across the street with faked calmness. In a dark corner outside Fang Qi's shop, 2 men smiled faintly when they saw a few weirdly dressed young men walking out of the internet cafe. Director Qin had promised them large sums of rewards if they caught disciples who entered the shop. These sneaky guys are very likely disciples from the academy. Their strange outfits are obviously disguises. Let's follow them. Bad news. Young Master Song, I feel like we are being followed. Lin Xiao suddenly sensed something, and he whispered to the other 2. Having engaged in highly intense battles in the games, they were more sensitive to danger. Hail a good beast carriage, and they won't be able to catch up. Song Qingfeng whispered back. My god! They are really instructors from the academy. They are chasing after us. Lin Xiao looked back and saw two black figures following them, and he shrieked with fear. My god! Danger! Beat it! Scared, they ran like mice seeing a cat. Run! Run! They were caught the moment that they left the shop. They look guilty. Hurry up and get them. The middle-aged male instructor was elated that he had finally found some potential troublemaking students after hiding in this damned place for the whole day. Meanwhile, Nalan Mingxiu and Lan Yan walked out of the internet cafe calmly as if nothing had happened. The other male instructor glanced at the shop entrance and saw them. Two more came out. Ms. Nalan, are you sure that we'll be fine? Lan Yan shivered and almost exposed themselves. I'm sure. Nalan Mingxiu continued walking. The middle-aged male instructor looked back and saw these two people walking out casually. They don't look guilty. We will chase the ones before us, I'm sure they are our targets. Don't let them get away. Right. Split up. Lin Xiao immediately turned into another alley. Su Luo suddenly found that he was alone, and then he looked back. *CK. He continued running. They split up, what should we do? The younger and taller instructor asked. This young instructor was obviously inexperienced. Each of us can chase after one. Seal their warrior chi when we catch him. The shorter, middle-aged instructor looked dignified and experienced. We'll search for the last one later. Good plan, Instructor Zhou. Hurriedly, the taller instructor chose one alley and sped after the fleeing disciple. Zhou Kaibei had been an instructor in Lingyun Academy for some years and had trained many elite disciples, but he was still not a high-level instructor yet. He took this task that Director Qin assigned to them as an opportunity of promotion if he could catch some disciples who came into the small shop to play games. With this thought, he continued the chase. Quickly, Zhou Kaibei saw Su Luo running into a side lane swiftly. He kicked the ground with his right foot and leaped up into the air before landing steadily on the top of a house with his hands clasped behind his back. Soon, he saw a figure running in the darkness from the corner of his eyes. Meanwhile, Lin Xiao was blocked by a burly instructor. How come he's so fast? Lin Xiao got ready to fight almost subconsciously. You want to resist? The burly instructor sneered as he bent his knees and pushed out his right hand with a shout. Almost simultaneously, Lin Xiao felt a huge force crashing toward him like an essence wall. Combat technique? Air vibration. Lin Xiao's heart sank as his hope of escaping vanished. I'm finished. Before he could move, he was sent flying by this huge force. Feeling all of his internal organs squeezing against each other, Lin Xiao flew up into the air. When he landed on the ground, he lost all sensations in his body. This combat technique released a powerful force with warrior chi which could shake the opponent's bones and internal organs. It was hard to block for a lower-level warrior. It was no surprise that Lin Xiao was suppressed by one attack. Meanwhile, Su Luo was caught in Zhou Kaibei's hand like a small chick as his warrior chi was sealed. Zhou Kaibei sneered as he looked at Su Luo in his hand. The academy has repeatedly ordered the disciples not to enter this small shop, but you still went there. Su Luo felt cold and thought, how come I'm so damn unlucky? There's one more. The darkness of the night deepened. Feeling tired after playing, Fang Qi opened the door and inhaled the fresh air outside while stretching. At this moment, Fang Qi saw a figure racing toward him while yelling and panting, Sir! Sir! Help me! Fang Qi's face twitched. Why are you back? Instruct! Song Qingfeng pointed behind him. Forget it. Let me in. Song Qingfeng raced into the shop. Since he couldn't outrun that instructor, the shop was the safest place for him. After all, no one could make trouble in the shop. In the moonlight, Fang Qi saw a figure flying down with his arms spread like a huge eagle. He was a short, middle-aged man who clutched another guy in his hand. Seeing Fang Qi, he narrowed his eyes and observed the ordinary-looking young man who was standing at the door. "Little guy, I remember that you're the owner of this shop, right?" At this moment, the burly instructor also jumped down from the roof. "I got this one. I'll see who else dares to enter this shop again." Zhou Kaibei nodded and reached out his hand. "Hand over the student who ran into your shop. It's the private business of our Lingyun Academy, so please don't intervene." Although he used the word please, his tone oozed with threatening vibes. Fang Qi was amused. "You're stopping people from coming to my business and still want me to cooperate. I know that you have a master inside your shop," Zhou Kaibei said with a sneer, "but you can't mess with our Lingyun Academy as well. I won't go into your shop and make trouble, but I'll wait outside. We'll check in the academy tomorrow morning to find out who is absent, and we'll know who is inside your shop now." Fang Qi's face twitched when he felt the academy instructor's persistence. It was one thing for the academy to create new rules, but it was another thing when they tried to order him around in front of his shop. "Do they really think that I'm made of clay?" At this moment, Fang Qi's eyelids twitched and saw a task appearing in the system interface. New task: play safely and peacefully at the Internet Cafe. 2. Task description: defeat the instructors from Lingyun Academy who are blocking the door and rescue the customers from them. Task reward: 1 random treasure box. Task instruction: when you are blocked by instructors, remember that this Internet Cafe will provide you with the strongest support. Ugh! There's even a task for it. Fang Qi looked surprised. "How about having a friendly battle with me in my shop?" Fang Qi smiled politely and said, "If you win, you can capture anyone you want. But if you lose, you have to give them to me." After saying that, he pointed at Su Luo and Lin Zhao who were captured already. Zhou Kaibei froze for a moment and then smirked. "Enter your shop? What trick are you playing? Do you take me as a moron? We can battle here outside." The burly instructor grinned. "If you win, they are yours. We can battle here outside." Fang Qi shrugged. "You can't use the weapon that can spit out fire." Zhou Kaibei immediately added, since he had done some investigation before he came and knew that even ancestral warriors found that mysterious weapon a headache. "Sir, you can't agree to that." Song Qingfeng immediately opened the door and yelled. "No." Zhou Kaibei said with a smirk, "Little Li, take these two back to the academy. They will be severely punished for breaking the rules purposefully. They probably will be kicked out of the academy." Fang Qi stopped him immediately and said, "Fine. I will not use the rocket launcher." "Well," Zhou Kaibei stroked his chin. "They are your friends? It seems that you care about these two kids." Lin Xiao and Su Luo had tears on their faces. The shop owner is so kind. Yet, the owner is a loyal friend. Zhang Xiaoyu, who watched the scene from behind, was also touched. "I thought he was black-hearted, but he's a reliable friend when needed." Fang Qi's face twitched, thinking that he was just doing a task. "Sir, you can't agree to that." Seeing Fang Qi agreeing to battle with them without the rocket launcher, Su Luo said anxiously, "The strength of the instructors at Lingyun Academy is greater than ordinary warriors. Although Mr. Fang seems to have great strength, it mainly comes from the rocket launcher. Do you want me to allow these two guys to catch whoever they want in front of my shop?" Fang Qi glanced at them and then walked to the center of the street. "Who will fight me first?" Song Qingfeng and his buddies felt dead inside. "We're finished." The shop owner agreed to fight them like this. "He is a Grandmaster warrior, right?" Liang Shi looked at the big instructor who came over to battle Fang Qi. "Can the shop owner win without the rocket launcher?" "Sir, you can do it." Ye Xiao waved her small fists and shouted, since she couldn't see whose strength was greater with her current cultivation strength. After shouting, she saw the people around her all looking at her weirdly. Ugh! Senior brothers, why are you staring at me? Ye Xiao was puzzled. It's obvious that the shop owner's cultivation strength is weaker than his opponent's, Yun Lian said. Junior sister, can't you see that? At this moment, Fang Qi took out an exquisitely made black sword from a sheath and held it in his hand. Sword. Not only Li Yang, the burly instructor facing Fang Qi, but the surrounding people all froze as well. I bought it while I went shopping. I can finally put it into use now. Fang Qi waved the long sword in his hand and looked at the burly guy in front of him, saying, "After you." At this moment, laughter burst out from the instructors. This sword looks pretty. Ye Xiao looked at the sword sheath, which looked like a slab of black jade, and the long sword that was engraved with exquisite patterns of bamboos. The shop owner has good taste. What are they laughing about? Yun Lian's face fell while he whispered, "It's of course pretty. It is a decorative sword which one hangs on the wall." Deco. Ye Xiao froze. Decorative sword. Hearing these two words, Song Qingfeng, Lin Xiao and Su Luo touched their foreheads, thinking, "We're finished. Don't you even know how to select a sword?" Li Yang looked at Fang Qi coldly while he raised his fists that were protected by gloves that had metal scales on them. "You're lucky that you have a powerful figure behind you. Otherwise, you'd be dead now. Don't waste your time on him. Get rid of him." Zhou Kaibei said in a grave voice, "We can finish the task sooner." "Got it." Li Yang bent his knees and spread his arms, staring at Fang Qi like a hungry tiger that was looking at its prey. The instructors of Ling Yun Academy are indeed extraordinary. Liang Shi sighed faintly and said with concern, "Just their presence alone can scare opponents." Song Qingfeng and others were not in the mood to watch the fight. At this moment, people suddenly saw a flashing sword light appeared in front of Fang Qi. No one saw him draw the sword, it came out of the sheath by itself as if it had a spirit of its own. The moonlight reflecting on the body of the sword looked like water flowing from a spring. Combat technique. Everyone could sense the warrior qi flowing through Li Yang's body in a certain pattern and gathering in his palms. He examined the distance of about 6 meters between them and shouted, "Enough! Tiger!" His shout stopped suddenly when he saw a flash of silver light slash toward him viciously from the corner of his eye, and a sharp ear-piercing whistling noise sounded. He wondered how his opponent's sword blade could be so long. However, he had no time to mull over it, he turned his combat technique toward the sword flash in a hurry. Boom! Two huge forces collided with each other and let out an earth-shaking loud noise. Obviously, Li Yang had greater power, and the force from his technique instantly shattered the street behind the sword. The violent force expanded outward and crashed toward the internet cafe by the side of the street. The ground in front of the shop shattered first. Young Master Chen was about to walk out of the shop, but he was so frightened that he almost dropped onto the ground on his butt when he saw the scene through the transparent glass door. However, nothing happened in the next moment, and the fragile glass door of the shop was intact. The qi gathered on Fang Qi's sword was obviously much weaker, but it all landed on Li Yang's body, shredding his clothes and wounding him. What's this combat technique? How can it be so powerful 6 meters away? To his astonishment, Li Yang saw that no one was holding the sword that was striking him. Fang Qi was standing 6 meters away from him. Besides him, all the customers of Internet Cafe watched in a daze as a thought dawned on them. Is it really they? Fang Qi waved his finger and the long sword flew up slowly under his control. It was an ordinary long sword, but it looked alive with its silver body under his control, looking like an agile silver snake. The sword was so nimble that it seemed like it could attack from any angle. Li Yang felt like his opponent was only a sword, but he had been forced into a tight corner instantly. The sword control technique. The people watching the battle couldn't believe that they were seeing the sword control technique in the real world. They had experienced the great power of the sword control technique in the game, but they had never imagined that they could watch it in the real world. You mastered it. Song Qingfeng almost thought that his eyes were playing tricks on him, but he witnessed the silver sword cut many bloody wounds on Li Yang's waist and belly. If the latter wasn't good at dodging, these cuts would have been fatal. On the other hand, Fang Qi stood where he was and didn't move an inch. Is it really the sword control technique? Ye Xiao opened her mouth subconsciously, until it was wide enough to fill an egg. The cultivators such as Bai Lang and Yun Lian also gaped while they watched the incredible sight. Sword control technique. The sword control technique which they had been contemplating and practicing day and night showed its great power in the real world for the first time. Seeing Fang Qi beating a more powerful warrior by just waving his fingers, the people watching the battle were all shocked. With the celestial sword, I can go to the heavens and enter the netherworld. The sword control technique was indeed powerful. When did the owner become so strong? Zhang Xiaoyu widened her eyes at the sight, and her small face filled with astonishment. *CK. The shop owner is awesome. Lin Xiao cussed subconsciously and yelled in elation. The shop owner is the best. Seeing that Fang Qi had turned the tables, Su Xiao immediately yelled after Lin Xiao. With tears flowing down his face, he felt exhilarated. I'm damn saved. With the celestial sword, I can go to the heavens and enter the netherworld. Song Qingfeng yelled in excitement. The imperial sword arrives with the wind, eliminating evil from heaven and earth. Ye Xiao also shouted. Many people cheered in excitement as well. The sword control technique was awe-inspiring. Fang Qi shrugged casually as if he were broadcasting on the live stream. The key to the sword control technique is speed. Among the combat techniques in the world, speed triumphs all. I don't need to exert much strength, but do you think he dares to use combat techniques against me? No, he doesn't. The shop owner is awesome. The most powerful shop owner in history. The sword control technique is amazing. If there were a live stream screen here, the bullet comments would have flooded it. Humph. You're a cultivator. Zhou Kaibei's face twitched, and his expression turned cold. He watched from a dark corner while Li Yang was put into a disadvantage. Cultivators are not so great at close-range combat. After all, we can't fail the mission that Director Qin assigned to us. Fine. An ordinary-looking knife flashed and appeared in his hand as a chilly presence released from it. He curled his lips, saying, I never said that it was an one-on-one battle. Sneak attack. Despicable. Shameless. How come Ling Yun Academy has such a shameless instructor? Shop owner, be careful. Furious yells and cusses rose, but it was too late for any of them to help due to the suddenness of the attack. The knife slashed toward Fang Qi belly as swift as lightning. Even if he could manage to dodge it narrowly, he would be severely wounded by this sudden and vicious attack. You're indeed just a cultivator. When the knife got close and Fang Qi showed no intention of dodging it, Zhou Kaibei smirked smugly. However, a faint light lit up on Fang Qi's chest while a row of data flashed across his eyes. The knife was only a few inches from Fang Qi's body. All the people had their hearts in their throats, thinking that they would see blood gushing out the next moment. However, they witnessed an unbelievable scene in the next moment. Boom! With his knee pushing up and his elbow crashing down, the two strongest parts of human body clashed and locked down the swift and vicious knife like two huge hammers. The extremely vicious knife froze suddenly. It couldn't even be drawn back, let alone moving forward. Even the warrior qi that was wrapped around the knife was shattered by this extremely vicious blow. This is close-range combat skills. Song Qingfeng and others were stupefied. Although Fang Qi's sword control technique was very powerful, he had also previously experienced a huge buff from the T-virus. Adding that to his strong cultivation strength, the close-range combat skills, and his complete synchronization with Chris, his strength was beyond that of an ordinary cultivator. He could handle most of the close-range combats. The combat skills from Resident Evil. Liang Shi was also stupefied. Isn't that the combat skills for low-level warriors? Which high-level warrior would use these techniques? How could one parry a combat technique with a grappling technique? The shop owner blocked this attack with combat skills for low-level warriors. The crowd gasped. They looked at Fang Qi and saw no fear on his face after being attacked from behind. After all, when he practiced the sword control technique, he was always attacked before he could see the sword. If he couldn't parry this attack, his hard efforts would be wasted. Fang Qi turned his head and glanced at the stupefied crowd who claimed that the combat skills were only for low-level warriors. It seems that you misunderstood these combat skills. In fact, if you master them, you can enter the competition in the King of Fighters. Competition of the King of Fighters. Zhang Xiaoyu blinked. What's that? Can we use the combat skills against the high-level warriors? Liang Shi asked in surprise. At this moment, Zhou Kaibei finally withdrew his knife from between Fang Qi knee and elbow. After retreating several steps, he stared at Fang Qi and asked in alarm, "Are you a cultivator or a warrior?" No cultivator could be so strong in close-range combat. He felt like he was seeing a ghost. To conceal his sneak attack, Zhou Kaibei didn't use his full force, but he hadn't expected his knife to be caught by a person who looked like a cultivator either. Glancing at the dumbfounded crowd, Fang Qi said, "Since you still have doubts about the combat skills, I'll show you how powerful they are. The combat skills needs nimbleness." Fang Qi made a stance. "If my opponent doesn't attack, I don't attack, I feint." Feint. Zhou Kaibei stared at Fang Qi coldly. Although he knew nothing about these combat skills, he understood feint. "Then, I'll give him a feint attack and see what trick he's playing." Now, the crowd watched the battle with concentration, wanting to know how to use combat skills on a warrior who could release the warrior Qi. Liang Shi even hurried over, bought a container of Häagen-Dazs, and watched the fight while he ate it. About 2 meters away from Fang Qi, Zhou Kaibei slashed out his knife, and the energy reached Fang Qi before the knife did. Meanwhile, Fang Qi swayed slightly and easily dodged the knife energy. Then in the blink of an eye, he had moved very close to his opponent. "Now, we must get close. At such a close range, there's no room for your opponent to use fancy techniques. It's impossible." Fang Qi spoke while he punched, looking as if he were taking a stroll in a courtyard. "Sir, I want to learn it." With bright eyes, Song Qingfeng watched Fang Qi dodge his opponent's knife energy with only a slight sway. The owner knows everything. Zhang Xiaoyu watched with envy on her face. "I want to learn it too. The shop owner can even do this." Liang Shi watched in amazement while he ate the Häagen-Dazs. "Sir, you're so strong. I want to learn it too." Ye Xiao yelled instantly. While his face twitched, Yunlian said with a whisper, "Junior sister, we're cultivators." Cultivators? Oh! Zhou Kaibei's face twitched non-stop. When Fang Qi got close, his fists, shoulders, head, elbows, and knees all became powerful weapons. Compared with formal combat techniques, Fang Qi attacks looked compact and tight like a continuous storm. With only one knife in his hand, Zhou Kaibei found that it was impossible to parry these attacks. He wished that he had 3 heads and 6 arms. Otherwise, it was impossible to block his opponent. The close-range combat advantage that the warriors had over the cultivators was a joke in this situation. "Want to stick to me?" Zhou Kaibei's expression turned dark while his feet moved in a certain pattern and his warrior qi gathered in him. Abruptly, he stomped his foot, shouting, "Shatter step!" Meanwhile, Fang Qi continued his live broadcast. "When punching, we must reserve 30% of our strength. At the same time, we must watch our opponent's movements to see if there's a weakness that we can use. For example, if he moves his feet, we can focus on his hands because most of his warrior qi will be on his feet. We must be nimble and don't collide with his force head-on." While he talked, Fang Qi left hand grabbed onto his opponent's wrist. While the shatter step took Zhou Kaibei more than 3 meters away instantly, Fang Qi had caught the latter's wrist and moved with him. They were still 1 foot apart. Zhou Kaibei was startled. He had tried to put distance between them, but his opponent still stood before him. More importantly, Fang Qi's feet looked as if they were rooted in the ground and showed no sign of imbalance. The moment he lands, use Kuzuke's heavy punch, and 127 shiki, a Ibana. Looking at Zhou Kaibei, who had been sent flying several meters, Fang Qi brushed the dust off his hand and said, he can never block this combo. TL notes, these are Iori Yagami's moves from the King of Fighters. I didn't know that combat skills could be used this way. I feel like I learned a lot. Many Resident Evil players said excitedly. Kuzuke's heavy punch and 127 shiki, a Ibana. Sir. You're playing in the game. You must be. Everyone was stupefied. Yeziao was elated, saying, I've decided. I don't want to be a cultivator in the future. I want to learn combat skills. Standing beside her, Yunlian's expression turned dark, thinking that her father would kill her if she did that. Sir, you're so strong. Song Qingfeng had thought that the combat skills they learned in Resident Evil were only for them to use when they ran out of warrior chi, but now he found that these combat skills could be so powerful. Zhou Kaibei struggled up from the ground, and Li Yang didn't fare any better. When they got up, Fang Qi asked, do you still want to fight? They looked at each other and said, we'll use techniques together. I don't believe that you can block our combined force. They got into position. Each of them had a cultivation strength greater than Fang Qi, let alone their combined force. When they gathered all the warrior chi in their bodies, the whole street turned chilly. In real-world battles, being clever is important. Now, we can show our trump card. While he explained, the sword that was hovered in the air behind him split into 2, then into 4, then 8, until the space was filled with swords. A moment ago, one sword had unleashed unbelievable power, and now, Zhou Kaibei, Li Yang. With so many swords attacking at such a close range, they would be turned into sieves before they could use their techniques. How could they combine their forces then? While shivering, their faces turned green. Run! 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 All the people were stupefied by this sight. Without a word, Zhou Kaibei and Li Yang fled in desperation. After they were gone, Fang Qi withdrew the sword and turned his head, meeting the stupefied eyes of the crowd. Sir! You even mastered the innumerable sword scroll. Sir, are you still a human? Liang Shi and the others asked in astonishment. Just when we are trying to learn how to use the sword control technique in the real world, the shop owner has begun using the innumerable sword scroll. Bai Lang and the others inhaled deeply and stared at Fang Qi. It was the innumerable sword scroll. What was more shocking was the realization that if Fang Qi didn't go easy on his opponents and didn't care about destroying the whole street, he could have killed those 2 instructors with the huge sword energies. They would have nowhere to escape to in the whole world. Meanwhile, Fang Qi frowned when he saw the uneven ground and the scratches on the white walls of the street. Due to his short time of practice, his control wasn't good enough. While glancing at the cheering young men and young women, he thought that it was enough for now. Then, Zhang Xiaoyu walked over suspiciously and looked at Fang Qi up and down. What are you looking at? Fang Qi reached out and pinched her cheek to stop her head from moving. I must make sure that you are really my boss. Zhang Xiaoyu said while stomping her feet. No. I feel like he is the real shop owner. Ye Xiao said, I'm sure that senior gave him private lessons. Elated, Ye Xiao rushed over, saying, I want to become that senior's disciple. Sir, do you still need employees? Sudden understanding dawned on the others, and the rest of the people asked in a hurry, Sir, do you need more employees? Seeing others trying to get her job, Zhang Xiaoyu got anxious like a kitten whose tail got trodden. Not at all. Of course, you do. Ye Xiao pointed at the shop on the other side of the street and said, "You have a new shop. What then? Can you do the cleaning? Can you do laundry and cook? Why should I do those things? Do you want the owner to do these chores?" Zhang Xiaoyu said with her hands resting on her hips. Standing on the side, Fang Qi thought, "I'm surprised at this lowly knows so much about her job now." "You're right." Ye Xiao froze and then felt dejected. "I guess I can do none of those things." Zhang Xiaoyu felt smug with her head raised. "But I know spiritual spells. It's no big deal. I know spiritual spells too. I'll show you the cloud summoning technique of our Cloud Ocean faction. Shame on you for showing us such a low-level spiritual spell. We have the fog summoning technique." Not impressed. Fang Qi watched the two girls bicker with each other, sensing a headache. On the other side, who? "We're saved finally." Dropping onto the ground listlessly, Lin Xiao and Su Luo touched the cold sweat on their backs, saying, "If we were taken back, we'd be finished." They shivered uncontrollably when they thought of the potential contemptuous looks from their families if they got kicked out of the academy. Song Qingfeng also heaved a sigh of relief. "Sir! Our hearts were in our throats. I almost died of fear. Anyway, thank you for what you did for us." After getting up from the ground, Lin Xiao's face twitched. "Sir! Can you do me another favor?" "What's it?" "Our cultivation strengths are sealed, and we can't break the seals." Lin Xiao and Su Luo looked embarrassed. After all, they would be in trouble if people found that their cultivation strengths were sealed when they got back to the academy. All in all, Song Qingfeng and the others went back home without incident. Meanwhile, this incident was reported to Qin Bing. "What? 2 instructors from the academy were defeated by the shop owner in front of the Origin Internet Club." Qin Bing slammed the desk with furious force. "What kind of wastrels are they? How come they are so useless?" Standing before him was an iron tower-looking middle-aged male instructor with a red complexion and a tough body. "That shop is extraordinary, and I'm afraid that ordinary instructors are no match for the shop owner." "Indeed." Qin Bing trailed off and sank into deep thought. In the instructor's residence of Lingyun Academy, the morning sunshine shone in through the glass while Mu Hongzhi read the lesson plan on the desk as usual. The eminent national examination was of great importance to the whole Lingyun Academy and its elite disciples. The combat techniques were the most important part of the examination, and she, as a combat technique instructor, had a great responsibility on her shoulders. This morning, the instructor's residence was livelier than usual, especially among the instructors who were managing the Huang house. "I heard that Instructor Zhou and Instructor Li went to that small shop named Origin Internet Club to capture disciples but got kicked out in humiliation. Is it true? Director Qin has issued the order forbidding the disciples from going there. How dare anyone break his rule?" "It's true. Instructor Zhou and Instructor Li are still recovering from their injuries. It's said, they might be expelled from the academy. That's severe." Instructor Mu. As the supervisor of Class A, Chen Zhong was close to Mu Hongzhi. When he passed her desk, he greeted her and said, "The instructors have been talking about it since early morning. Don't think much of it." Mu Hongzhi nodded. The news spread quickly. Despite the Academy's efforts on hiding the incident, many people witnessed that battle, which meant that it was only a matter of time before the news was spread all over the place. She was a bit more curious about this small shop and wondered what magic it had that drew the disciples to it even at great risks. Then, she shook her head slightly, trying to get these thoughts out of her head. After all, many urgent matters awaited her. Meanwhile in Lingyun Academy, I heard that some people entered the Origin Internet Club wearing masks and came back safe and sound. Xi Chi had several schoolmates around him. "Come on, we'll try it tonight as well." "Okay. Okay. Okay. We'll go and get some masks now. We'll leave the academy together tonight." Nalan Mingxia was also in the academy, Ms. Nalan, Lan Yao looked regretful, saying, "We left early last night. If we stayed longer, we would have watched the shop owner use the innumerable sword scroll. With the shop owner defeating 2 instructors, it means that we can go and play games without worrying about being caught, right?" With a frown, Nalan Mingxiu said, "Tonight, we'll go and play Counter-Strike and practice our skills with guns." "Awesome!" Lan Yan said. She felt happy that she could finally play in relaxation. "We can ask the shop owner and the others to join us to play that map called Dust. I didn't know that one can play games while wearing a mask." Xiao Yulv had been craving for the games in Häagen-Dazs in Fang Qi shop for a long time. Every day, when he watched everyone else enjoying the games and snacks, he had the urge to rush over and play as well. However, the only thing that he could do was watch others play. He wasn't even allowed to send bullet comments, let alone playing. However, he found that people could hide their identities and play the games in the shop with masks on their faces yesterday. He was thrilled at this discovery. He glanced up and saw the name Joe's shop on the board. It was an ordinary small shop. With a faint smile, Xiao Yulv walked in and saw a white-haired old man. As he chuckled, he took out the crystals that he had prepared and asked, "Old man Joe, how is my mask?" "It's on the table." Old man Joe glanced at Xiao Yulv. "I put a small stealth array on the mask, and no one can detect your aura while you are wearing it." "Hee." "That's great." Xiao Yulv weighed the mask in his hand and put it on, finding that it fit his face perfectly. He immediately took out more crystals and said, "Make some more for me and don't tell anyone about these masks." After all, he was going to use these masks to conceal his identity, and he would be in trouble if Fang Qi found out. Even his aunt would give him a good beating, let alone Fang Qi if he were discovered. At this thought, Xiao Yulv felt like crying, wondering why he was treated so badly by his own family members while others were being spoiled. "They even claimed that they did it for my benefit. Damn it!" After threatening Old Man Joe a little with his background, Xiao Yulv put on the mask and walked out of the door with satisfaction. "Instructor Joe! You have clues so soon?" With his hands wrapped in bandages and his face beaten black and blue, Li Yang asked in resentment. "Of course." Zhou Kaibei looked gloomy. "I have my resources in Zhuhua City. They dared to ask the shop owner to beat us. These students don't have the slightest respect for the instructors. It is outrageous." "Right." Li Yang said through his gritted teeth, "When we find out the identities of those unruly disciples, I will report them to the academy and get them expelled." They had some helpers with them, and the person in the lead had a deep scar in his face. Zhou Kaibei glanced at them and urged, "Old BA, show the way." "Calm down. We are almost there." The guy with scar said, "Turn right at the end of the alley, and it's our destination. I've done some investigation and found that only 3 people ordered this kind of masks. When we get the looks of those guys, you can find out who they are." Before they reached the end of the alley, Zhou Kaibei saw a figure flashing past them. "Ugh!" Li Yang was startled. "That person is wearing the kind of zombie mask that those disciples last night wore. I saw it too." Zhou Kaibei's face turned dark. "They even dared to come here. Is he the guy who caused your misfortune yesterday?" Behind them, Dao Ba picked up a paper bag from the ground and said, "Let's follow him. When we get close to him, you two seal his cultivation strength." He was experienced with such things. Meanwhile, Xiao Yulv was musing to himself in excitement, "What a loophole I've found. With this mask, the shop can't forbid me from playing the games." He found that the masks which Song Qingfeng and the others wore yesterday were quite interesting. They looked so real that some customers almost dropped to the ground with fright when seeing them. He had liked the mask instantly, and he asked around and found the only shop that was able to make such masks in the city. He went to the shop yesterday and placed the order, so he got the mask today. Xiao Yulv got excited and thought with relish, "This time, I'll pretend to be one of the other customers and buy all the delicious snacks I want. I'll play without stop for 24 hours. I'll flood the screen with bullet messages and scare away the few remaining customers in the process. At this thought, Xiao Yul felt so great that all the frustration that had accumulated in his heart were suddenly gone. Ha 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 ha. While he was laughing, Xiao Yul's vision suddenly darkened. What's happening? Why did everything become dark? Something covered my head. Before he could react, he felt two strong surges of essence rushing into his body, sealing his spiritual essence. Then, fists landed onto him. Och! Who's beating me? Who f***ing dare to beat me? Do you want to die? Still stubborn? Beat him some more. You dare to threaten us? Do you want to die, kid? More punches and kicks landed. You dare to beat me, Xiao Yulv? Are you seeking death? Xiao Yulv exploded. Xiao, the attackers froze and looked at each other. Xiao Yulv, the big bully from the Liu Yundaist Palace. His voice sounds different from the three guys from yesterday, Li Yang said. No, Dao Ba froze. No. We got the wrong guy. Zhou Kaibei's face turned dark. Run! Run! We're finished if he sees us. Run! Run now! Xiao Yulv, FKU. It was said the disciples from Lingyun Academy would be holding a masquerade ball in the Origin Internet Club. It was a happy gathering, but Xiao Yulv, who had worked hard to get his mask, looked furious. He didn't get to the Origin Internet Club until the evening, and he was in a bad mood since he had been beaten by some people while he was walking. Seeing the players who concealed their identities under masks or full helmets walking into the Origin Internet Club, Xiao Yulv, who hid his bruised face under the zombie mask, thought with gritted teeth, today, I must get my hands on a game. It is why I plan to take them out of the mountain to play the Legend of the Sword and Fairy and Counter-Strike. They will have a personal experience this way, Su Tianji said earnestly. Play what? With a dark expression, Shwedailv widened his eyes while the veins bulged on his forehead. The Legend of the Sword and Fairy. Su Tianji said, Palace Master, you've been busy with the operation of the palace and don't know the Legend of the Sword and Fairy or Counter-Strike. Su Tianji was late today. Despite the many businesses that she had to do after coming out of seclusion, she still wanted to play the games. Even after she finished the Legend of the Sword and Fairy, she would play it again and try to get a better ending. Well, junior brother Xiao didn't come with us today. Isn't it nice? He kept babbling and throwing out his comments even though he couldn't play. How annoying he is, Feng Hua and Yuexin whispered to each other while they followed Su Tianji into the shop. Standing beside them, the guy who wore a zombie mask got mad when he heard these comments. Meanwhile, Su Tianji had a man who was wearing a wooden mask by her side. He looked around and whispered, Junior sister, do you really think that the Legend of the Sword and Fairy and Counter-Strike are so useful to our Liu Yundaist palace? Su Tianji's expression turned dark as she asked, Palace Master, why are you wearing the mask? I must cover my face. Shwedailv snorted with his hands clasped behind his back. As the master of our palace, I would feel ashamed if the disciples know that I came out so late to play games. This mask has a history. Shwedailv said, when I was young, I used to sneak out of the mountain but got caught by our master each time I tried. Later I asked for this mask from our uncle master, Lu Fengzi. I'm sure that no one can see through this mask. Su Tianji. Shwedailv glanced around and saw many customers wearing masks, just like him. With his hands clasped behind his back, he said proudly, see? They share my thoughts. Before he finished his words, a guy wearing the full paladin helmet threw his arm around his shoulder and said, Hey, junior brother. Your mask is unique. Where did you buy it? Come on. We need some more players for Counter-Strike. Come and join us. Shwedailv. How about the girls? Do you want to join? Tianji. At this moment, a guy wearing a zombie mask ran over and raised his hand. Count me in. I want to play Counter-Strike too. While he spoke, he sneaked a glance at Fenghua and Yuexin and thought, you dared to badmouth me behind my back. I'll give you a good beating in the game. Come on then. The young man wearing the paladin helmet glanced around them and said, we have enough players now. Xuedaolv and Tianji looked at each other. These friends are so enthusiastic. It's fine. Anyway, I plan to try Counter-Strike that you mentioned. Xuedaolv felt awkward, but luckily no one saw his expression under the mask. I'll see what kind of novel spiritual artifacts are the guns that you told me about. Today, many disciples of Ling Yun Academy came here, hiding their identities under the masks. Some of them were new customers coming with friends. What on earth is this Origin Internet Club? Why is the Academy forbidding us from coming here? A disciple who was covering his face with a black scarf asked in a low voice. I have no idea. I just heard that it's fun here. Let's see what's so fun about this place. Even casinos are not in the blacklist of the Academy, so I wonder why this shop is so special. This disciple was also wearing a black scarf. Resident Evil? Or Diablo? We can choose one of the 4 games. Which one should we try first? Diablo. This name sounds thrilling. Counter-Strike. I heard them talk about it. Let's try them separately. At this moment, a guy wearing a zombie mask walked over and knocked on the counter. Xiaoyu, activate Counter-Strike for me. He handed the money to Zhang Xiaoyu. Another person wearing this kind of mask. Zhang Xiaoyu mumbled and accepted the crystals. Ha 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 ha. Xiao Yulv laughed silently. I was right. He hurried back to his seat. Hey! One with the zombie mask. The guy wearing paladin helmet yelled, you go to the terrorist team. Oh! Okay. Excited, Xiao Yulv copied the others and double-clicked the game. While putting on the virtual headset, he leaned back on the chair cheerfully and imagined how he would be killing his opponents in a moment. Ha 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 ha. I'm smart. Then, he saw a line of red words on the screen, you are on the blacklist of the shop. Please exit the game and get a refund at the counter. Xiao Yulv's face turned green instantly. It felt like he had just finished foreplay with a girl when they were caught by the girl's relatives. Ah! Xiao Yulv felt so frustrated that he wanted to kill someone. Where's your boss? Desperate, Xiao Yulv slammed his hand on the table and yelled, there's a malfunction in your spiritual artifact. His shout drew attention from the players around him. Zhang Xiaoyu also looked toward him. Malfunction. Zhang Xiaoyu walked over in bafflement. I never saw a malfunction in our shop. Meanwhile, Fang Qi finally finished the hard training in the game cultivation room. He remembered that he had a treasure chest to open after finishing that task yesterday. He opened the system interface again. System, what's in this random treasure chest? Fang Qi asked. Please open it yourself. I can't reveal the information to you. Fang Qi's face twitched. What's your use to me? Fang Qi clicked open the treasure chest on the system interface. Beep. You get a pack of Owner Brown cigarettes. What? Stupefied, Fang Qi glanced at the system interface. Owner Brown cigarettes. There's only one pack. After all, he got 200 bottles of Sprite last time. Chapter 123 A Comedy Livestream. At this moment, a line of words suddenly appeared on the system interface. The Owner Brown cigarettes are specially made by the system and can activate one's potential without any side effects. Ugh! Activate my potential. Fang Qi froze after looking at the explanation on the system interface. After all, snacks such as Sprite and Häagen-Dazs were just luxuries made by the system. Despite their great taste, they had no effects on people's strength. Only wealthy customers could afford them constantly while others would just have a taste of them occasionally. Yet, this pack of cigarettes could activate the potential ability in one's body. Smoke or not? Fang Qi hesitated since he hadn't smoked for years after quitting smoking with a lot of effort. Maybe I'll try one to see the effects. At this moment, Zhang Xiaoyu knocked on the door, saying, "Owner, someone downstairs is claiming that his computer is malfunctioning. Can you come down and have a look?" The computer malfunctioned. Fang Qi sat up from the bed. How can the computers in our shop malfunction? Someone is making trouble for us, I guess. When Fang Qi followed Zhang Xiaoyu down to the first floor, Xiao Yulv was still yelling, "It's my first time in this shop, and I'm on the blacklist. The spiritual artifact in the shop must have a malfunction." Fang Qi heard him and wondered why this voice was familiar. "Xiao Yulv!" Fang Qi yelled. "Who called my name?" The guy wearing the zombie mask stopped yelling, feeling like his heart had frozen. "I'm finished." Before he finished his words, Xiao Yulv found himself flying out of the door again. Su Tianji dusted her hands and returned to her seat before the computer with a cold expression. Could anything be more humiliating than that? On the other side, well, the shop owner finally came out. The two girls wearing black cloaks who sat opposite to Xiao Yulv said, "It seems that Xiao Yulv is out. We can ask the shop owner to join the game." "Good." Nalan Hongguo was sitting beside them, and he snorted. "I faced a crushing defeat last time against this kid. I must return the favor today. Thanks to this kid, I have a lot on my plate with the disorders in the city. Today, I'll give him a good beating." "How come Su Tianji is on their team? Who pulled her in?" "It's fine. Except her, the others on their team are all rookies. They are not experienced at all." An Huey smirked. They had planned to get some practice in the game and were surprised that Fang Qi came down at this moment. "How about sending a message to Su Tianji and ask her to work with us?" To prepare for this game, they had secretly practiced their skills and picked the more complicated map, Dust. Since Fang Qi tricked them last time, the sly and experienced old guys decided to return the favor and teach him a lesson. "Sir!" At this moment, Nalan Mingxiu stood up and called to Fang Qi with a calm expression. "What's wrong? Is your computer malfunctioning as well?" Fang Qi glanced at her. "Do you want to join us in a game of Counter-Strike?" Nalan Mingxiu said. "Play Counter-Strike with you guys? You guys are too weak." Fang Qi glanced at the people who were sitting there. With their faces twitching, they cussed in their minds, "We'll beat you senseless later." "It's fine. We are just practicing." The guy wearing the paladin helmet walked up and threw his arm around Fang Qi's shoulder as he said, "Come on. Play a few rounds with us." Fang Qi was pulled into the game and found 16 players in the lobby. It was 8 versus 8. They had played a few rounds. The moment that Fang Qi entered the game, he heard that the counter-terrorists had won the last round. According to the system's explanation, people learned that the counter-terrorists were like the city guards, and the terrorists were like robbers. It wasn't hard to understand. He turned on the live stream while he was doing it. Ugh! The shop owner turned on the live stream again. That's unusual. He turned on the live stream this late in the night. Is he broadcasting Counter-Strike tonight? Good. I have a problem with flick shooting. I'll watch it. Although many players had begun their games, quite a few turned to watch the live stream. We have a full house today. I hope that you don't mind my smoking. Fang Qi opened the pack and found only 10 cigarettes and a small lighter inside. The system is very considerate. Fang Qi's eyes brightened, and he lit a cigarette for himself. With a dark expression, Su Tianji was about to put on the virtual headset, knowing it would be a tough fight. Looking at the screen, Fang Qi inhaled the smoke leisurely. Increasing potential? How? How come I don't feel any difference? But the cigarette smells great without any strange scents. With the cigarette between his fingers, Fang Qi controlled the characters in the game with the keyboard and mouse. While he was waiting for the loading screen and buying guns, Fang Qi glanced at the record and then typed several words in his team channel. Are you all newbies? Rush B. Rush B? What does it mean? The people looked at each other in puzzlement. A new strategy. The live stream screen was full of question marks. Just entering the game, Shwedailv bought a machine gun, which was the only thing that he could afford, and then he looked at Su Tianji in confusion. What does it mean? Fang Qi froze for a moment after hearing that and then typed immediately, rush to the left after me. Su Tianji's expression turned darker, thinking, now that I finally persuaded the palace master to play Counter-Strike, can't you play it properly? How can you command the operation properly while you smoke? Fang Qi typed the reply, will you do it then? Su Tianji, when the game began, Fang Qi issued a radio command, follow me. Fang Qi face twitched, wondering why the system didn't translate the commands. However, he had no time to dwell on this now. While typing, go, 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 he summoned his teammates. How come the shop owner's movements look stiff? While watching Fang Qi dash forward with his team, the customers who were watching the game soon realized that something wasn't right. He switches guns pretty quick, but his movements look stiff. They lacked nimbleness. Not nimble at all. The shop owner is smoking. He is playing using keyboard and mouse. At this moment, a bullet comment appeared on the screen. Playing with keyboard and mouse. Sir, are you serious? Sir, are you broadcasting a comedy live stream today? You slipped and are using game language. Rows of bullet comments shot up. Today, the shop had many customers, and the screen was almost flooded. Not familiar with the map and not able to tell people apart, his aim at the distant targets was poor, and he got dizzy by the movements of his opponents in close range. Having died more than a dozen times, he didn't even touch his opponent's hair. Therefore, when Fang Qi issued commands, he felt like a drowning person who had finally found a lifeline. Following Fang Qi closely, he looked at his teammates who were gathering together and felt much more confident. This spiritual artifact can be used without any spiritual energy. Shwedailv played with the machine gun in his hands curiously while he ran with Fang Qi and the others. Then, he asked Su Tianji, junior sister, what's the situation now? Are we going to test the power of this spiritual artifact? Knowing that her senior brother was running with the group without any knowledge of the situation, Su Tianji felt frustrated. Follow me, and I assure you that we will win. Just ignore this guy. In Dusk 2, the counter-terrorists and terrorists can fight on 3 paths. The terrorists could take the route on their left and walk straight to the big platform in Zone B. Rush B was a strategy where every terrorist would dash to Zone B at top speed and catch their opponents off guard. This term was simple and straightforward for both new and old players, no matter what language they spoke. At this moment, Fang Qi led his team through the outer room of Zone B. Meanwhile, Nalan Hongguo came and stationed his team outside of the door, which was at a right angle to the direction of Fang Qi. In a moment, you all rush out the door and turn right. After that, fire right away. Fang Qi felt like his brain was unusually clear. Even though he was playing with only the keyboard and mouse, his movements were swift and exact, they were even better than before. He pressed the space key and typed a line of words while he leaped forward without causing any delay. I can do this command too, Su Tianji said from behind angrily. There is nothing special in his commands. Fang Qi didn't speak. At this moment, they didn't see any opponents or hear any footsteps. But then Su Tianji saw Fang Qi throwing out a stun grenade which hit the wall on the left and bounced to the right and out of the long corridor. He had used the wall to block the flare, so it wouldn't blind his team even if they rushed forward. Stationed closer to the doorway, Nalan Hongguo heard the footsteps and immediately called out to his team, someone's coming. Before he could finish his words, a stun grenade dashed out from the dark corridor. No. Subconsciously, Nalan Hongguo turned his body. Hearing Nalan Honggu's first shout, his teammates all pointed their guns to the corridor while taking defensive positions, and they were totally blinded. Their screens all turned white. They cussed silently, such a lousy commander. Nalan Honggu had just turned his head to avoid the flash, and his sight was still blurry when he found that smoke was gushing out from the corridor. Meanwhile, under the cover of the smoke grenade, 8 terrorists rushed in with machine guns. On the big screen, the 8 terrorists fired at the 3 to 4 counter-terrorists who were still scrambling to find cover. Da 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 da. Li Haoran's screen was total white, he died. And Huey died the moment he recovered some of his sight. Ouyang Zhen scrambled to a cover. Then, he saw a figure turning to him in the smoke. With a gunshot, he died. Nalan Honggu was the first to dodge. With a roll, he hid behind a nearby box and found that half of his HP was gone. Nalan Mingxiu just jumped onto the window in Zone B and found a sniper's spot. The moment that she stuck out her head, a bullet shot toward her. Lan Yan was a bit behind and had just come to the door, only half of her body was revealed. Suddenly, about 5 machine guns turned toward her. Da 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 da. She instantly moved back and saw that she only had 8 HP left. The people who hadn't entered the door kept asking, "What happened? What's the situation?" Buletin Lei, who had been outside monitoring the situation with a sniper rifle, asked, "How come so many people died?" Obviously, they were still confused. Meanwhile, all the players who were watching the live stream were stunned. What's this tactic? It isn't a tactic at all. It's just rushing. Rushing together can be so strong. It was because the owner used the stun grenade and smoke grenade so well. Sir, are you sure that you did it with a keyboard and mouse? You must have switched the VR mode, right? The shot which killed the sniper was so accurate. He must have switched modes. Many people had seen that even though the firing came from the 8 terrorists, the key lay in the timing and positioning of the stun grenade and smoke grenade. The stun grenade blinded the enemies, and the 8 terrorists pushed forward under the cover of 2 smoke grenade before firing. How could one control so accurately with the keyboard and mouse? No way. People thought. You can come over and have a look. The shop owner has been using with keyboard and mouse. At this moment, a bullet comment appeared on the big screens in both shops. Impossible. It's difficult to play with a keyboard and mouse. I know that one can control walking with keyboard and mouse with ease, but aiming and shooting a moving target? Are you kidding me? I, gun god of Lingyun, am the first who doubt it. I, sniper god of Zhuhua, am the second who doubt it. A ton of bullet comments appeared on the screen. It's okay to move from left and right with the keyboard, but how can you play with a mouse? The mouse can only move to the left and right on the desk. If you don't believe me, come and check the 23rd computer in the old shop. As one of the first players of Resident Evil, Guo Xiong was a powerful disciple of the Heaven House and quite confident in his shooting skills. However, when he stood behind Fang Qi and watched him play the game, he became stupefied. Could one play this game with keyboard and mouse? Could one play like this? Meanwhile in the game only Nalan Honggu was left in Zone B. He tossed out a stun grenade and tried to retreat, but the moment he did it, about 6 hand grenades rolled toward him. The grenades were thrown not that accurately, and the ground was soon covered by them, making it impossible to flee. Although these players were newbies, they were able to do the basic cooperation. Nalan Honggu. When he got blown into the sky, he almost spat out a mouthful of blood onto the screen. Nalan Mingxiu threw out another stun grenade and tried to kill a terrorist with her sniper rifle. The moment that she stuck her head out of the window of Zone B and took aim, a figure suddenly leaped out from an impossible corner from beneath the window and struck a dagger toward her. From her death cam, she saw a character resembling Fang Qi waving a dagger in front of her. Nalan Mingxiu's face turned dark, and she almost smashed the keyboard onto the ground. Ha 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 ha! The shop owner is awesome. He is really playing with keyboard and mouse. The aim is so good. Some audience members coming in from the shop across the street and were dazed at the sight. Want to snipe? I will destroy you with a dagger. Laughter sounded in the shop. Soon, Zone B turned into an ocean of fire with the explosion of C4. My god! That's awesome! Young Master Chen, who had been killed countless times before, found that not only was he alive, but he got one kill. Tears slid down his cheeks since it was the first kill that he had gotten after playing for so long. When he rushed into Zone B, he was lucky enough to get a kill without losing a single HP. The other young men who came with young Master Chen also shed tears of excitement. It was awesome. Young Master Chen, this round was so cool. The shop owner is so strong. This spiritual artifact can release such great power without activating any spiritual energy. Even the Yuan River Realm cultivators are no match for it if they are not careful. Shwedailv had just gotten a kill. While looking at the exquisitely made machine gun, he felt great in the game. Shwedailv chuckled and said, it was surprising how well that young man commanded the operation. Junior sister, didn't you say that the more kills you have, the more powerful you get? How many people did you kill in the last game? Reluctant to follow Fang Qi orders, Su Tianji had been the last one to rush out. Looking at her score of 0, her face turned stiff. He just caught the opponents off guard. He won't be so lucky next time. In the next round, we can buy sniper rifles, and then I'll show you my strength. Somehow, I feel like this kid's movement is quite stiff today. Su Tianji glanced at Fang Qi character and saw that he had a sniper rifle in his hands. Where did you get the sniper rifle? I got it from the ground. Fang Qi typed the words, continue our old strategy. Su Tianji's expression turned darker. You are trying to rush with the sniper rifle? Why not leave it with me, and I'll guard the base. I'm sure that they will be on guard in this round. Fang Qi typed another line of words, what's the difference between snipers and dead fishes if they don't rush up? Su Tianji felt like cussing. How did I end up on your team? Meanwhile on the big screens, what's the difference between snipers and dead fishes if they don't rush up? Sir, I'm your fan. Playing with a sniper rifle with a keyboard and mouse? Are you serious, sir? Can we play seriously? No way. The owner is going to try to flick shot with the keyboard and mouse. The players who didn't believe that Fang Qi was playing with the keyboard and mouse had all rushed over from the shop across the street. While watching Fang Qi rushing up, the players who were standing behind him were stupefied. He is playing with the keyboard and mouse while smoking. At this moment, Fang Qi suddenly felt like his intuition was much stronger than before. Before he entered the doorway, he threw a smoke grenade into it. This time, Nalan Hongyu had learned from their last mistake. After rushing into Zone B at top speed, they each took a shooting position. Smoke spread out slowly, blocking the entire corridor while permeating into the large space outside of the doorway. With the gun in her hands, Nalan Mingxiu hid in a corner on the left of the doorway. Although the smoke made it hard for her to see clearly, no one could spot her since the space in front her was filled with smoke. She was sure that this hiding place that she chose was a blind spot for most people. When someone rushed out, their backs would be facing her. Someone's coming. Soon, she heard footsteps and immediately raised her gun. However, just when she got ready to pull the trigger. Vam! 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 Dagger strike! Nalan Mingxiu, who shot 3 bullets with her Desert Eagle, was turned into a corpse. Dumbfounded, she watched as a person made a circle around her spot and ran out while the smoke scattered a bit. The audience watched the smoke on Fang Qi's screen, and then the message appeared, saying that he had gotten a kill. What was that play? He can kill without seeing. You dared to hide in the first spot. Fang Qi mumbled to himself while he rushed out of the smoke with all his teammates. Then, he searched for the second spot, and then the third. While he cleared the spots one by one, the audience watched him shake his mouse and fire before switching to the dagger and getting a kill immediately. Then, he switched back to a gun, fire, and changed again. His movements were orderly and rhythmic. Did you just use the flick shot with the keyboard and mouse? The shop owner just used flick shot with the keyboard and mouse. Soon, someone sent a message onto the screen. Playing flick with keyboard and mouse? Impossible. How can one flick shot with the keyboard and mouse? Come and see for yourself. The bullet comments flooded the screen, and Fang Qi instantly had a large group of people behind him, watching him play. Hiss! They all rubbed their eyes as if they were afraid that their eyes were playing tricks on them. It can be played like this. After playing for so long, they had never seen anyone play like this with the keyboard and mouse. Standing behind him, they watched Fang Qi hand turning into a blur while he made the accurate plays as he found cover and sniped. The owner's skills are amazing. Looking at Fang Qi standing in Zone B while covered in blood with only a few HP left, the audience were stupefied. He really won. How could he? He even won in such a situation. The last kill was really dangerous. With only 20 HP left, he faced someone who had almost full HP and a submachine gun. How come I feel like the shop owner is playing better with the keyboard and mouse? Looking at the end match interface which was showing the victory of his team, Fang Qi leaned back on his computer chair. Weren't you smoking? Su Tianji put down the virtual headset with a dark expression. In this match, she almost did nothing, but they won it under Fang Qi leadership. Don't you know that the shop owner was playing with the keyboard and mouse? Someone standing behind answered for Fang Qi. Keyboard and mouse? The accurate sniping plays came from keyboard and mouse. Su Tianji froze. Fang Qi stubbed out the cigarette when it burned to the end and tossed the butt into a nearby garbage can. No one in this room but Fang Qi knew that in another world, the games were originally played with the keyboard and mouse. There had been a group of people who had been crazy for the games and gained glory because of them. Fang Qi took a deep breath nostalgically and put on his virtual headset. Why are you staring at me? Let's continue. Meanwhile, Su Tianji got a message which said, Dea ist Su, this kid is quite good. Will you do us a favor so that we can get our revenge? With a twitch on her face, Su Tianji answered, the kid played with keyboard and mouse, but now he switched to the virtual headset. Are you sure that you want to continue? And Hui's entire face twitched as well, totally defeated. He felt like he was totally defeated inside. Meanwhile, Fang Qi got a message, the host has become a popular internet cafe owner with skills, strength, and popularity. You have gained access to a new program, TV dramas. Watching method, Super Theater, pay on demand. 2 episodes will be updated each Monday and Tuesday. New task, binge watching TV dramas in this world. Task process, total activations of Resident Evil 1, 150, total activations of Resident Evil 1 the movie, 100, total activation of Diablo 2, 200, total activation of The Legend of the Sword and Fairy, 100, total activation of Counter-Strike, 100. Task reward, Zhu Xian, the original novel.